Chapter 101. Li Qingshan did not even have the strength to reply. The path ahead was covered in snow and wind. It seemed endless. He only had one thought, and he kept climbing. Xianyue suddenly whispered in his ear, "I'm sorry. Master has dragged you down." He let go of his arms powerlessly and fell into the abyss of snow and wind. His eyes were closed, and there was even a hint of a smile on his face. Li Qingshan subconsciously reached out with his right hand and grabbed her cold hand tightly. He could not let go, but he could not take a step forward on the ice wall without his right hand. As he stopped moving, the cold invaded his body, and his blood gradually stopped flowing. He was already 3,000 feet above the ground. Even if it was him, if he fell, he would be smashed to pieces. In the snowstorm, he finally let out a hysterical howl, like a trapped beast in a desperate situation. In the snow and wind, 2 red lights approached, and a figure quickly climbed up, little, and grabbed Xianyue and carried her on Li Qingshan's back. There was no need to exchange words. Li Qingshan's mouth had already frozen. He freed his right hand and continued climbing. He suddenly saw the end of the seemingly endless ice cliff. He was only a few dozen feet from the top. A large hand grabbed the edge of the cliff, and Li Qingshan climbed up with all his might. He no longer had any strength left in him. He forced himself to stay upright, and with trembling hands, he touched Emo Xuanyue's face. It was cold. His chest did not beat. She was already dead. Li Qingshan suddenly burst into tears. A ray of light pierced through the snow, and the soaring dragon elder appeared at the top of the cliff. His face was pale, and his clothes were tattered. He looked at Xianyue on the ground, and an expression of as expected appeared on his face. His meteor sword. It was not something an ordinary demon general could bear. However, just in case, he had chased after her at all costs. Furthermore, the things stored in Xuanyue's bell could make up for his losses. A demon general's demon core was also very precious. Li Qingshan wanted to fight for his life, but he did not even have the strength to do so. He questioned, why? What did she do wrong? Because she's a demon, and so are you? That's wrong. The soaring dragon elder raised his soaring dragon sword and swung it down without even looking at Little, and who was standing in front of Li Qingshan. I didn't kill you because you're human. A man stood in front of Li Qingshan. No one knew when he had appeared, including the soaring dragon elder. It was as if he had been standing there since a long time ago, like an expert from ancient times to the future. Eternal and unchanging. His figure could only be considered tall, and he did not emit any terrifying aura. However, in Li Qingshan's eyes, his back was even more majestic than the ice sword cliff beneath his feet. His skin was covered in a layer of navy blue. His sturdy physique didn't seem bulky at all. Instead, it was like the undulating peaks of a great mountain that had withstood thousands of years of wind and rain. Every part of it was natural and harmonious, condensing endless power. Then Li Qingshan saw a pair of ox horns on his head, one of which was broken. He couldn't help but call out, "Brother Ox!" The soaring dragon elder's eyes narrowed. Every part of his soul screamed out in warning. He had crossed countless battlefields and experienced countless dangers in his life, but none of them added up to the danger he was in right now. He wanted to roar out furiously. He wanted to swing his sword. He wanted to use all the abilities and techniques he had learnt in his life to unleash all of his power and trump cards, but he just happened to be unable to move a single finger. All he could do was stare at the man with widened eyes and say with an off-key voice, Who are you?" How could such a terrifying figure become the backer of 2 lesser demons? The divining elder had never mentioned this, and the divination did not show anything either. It can't be. I won't die here. Oxen did not answer his question. Instead, he continued, I'm killing you because I want. He extended his right hand. With that, the soaring dragon elder vanished from this world. Yes, he had vanished. There were no signs, no powerful moves, no terrifying demon chi. And the first elder of the Sword Collection Palace, a golden core cultivator, who was renowned throughout the Green Province, had been killed in such a straightforward manner. Brother Ox. Li Qingshan opened his mouth, but he had no idea what to say. He had considered Oxen to be very powerful, but he never expected him to be so terrifying. Oxen turned around and extended his hand before Li Qingshan. A jade ring lay there quietly. It was the Soaring Dragon Elder's Sumeru ring. I've turned you into this without your consent. You can treat this as my apology. I've left something in there for you. The value of a golden core cultivator's entire life's treasures was so great that it could even make the eyes of many disinterested cultivators green with greed. Even if a regular person sold everything they had, they would not be able to exchange it for a single item. I know you have many questions, but believe me, the answers you've found yourself are far more valuable than what I can give you. It's just like how I can give you the power to sweep through this world, but I don't, because the power you can find is 100 times more powerful than what I can give you. Now, it's time for us to part. What? My existence has already been discovered by a certain person in the heavens. You'll have to walk your own path in the future. These days might have been short, but they've been very pleasant. Remember, don't lower your head to anyone or anything. You've once ridden on my back. As he spoke, Oxen's figure gradually faded. His voice was like a great bell, shaking up mountains, and thunder, shaking up Li Qingshan's soul. Hold on. Li Qingshan extended his hand, but he only grabbed the ring. Oxen vanished from the world, as if he had never existed in the first place. It was as if all these years and days were just a dream. Only his final words constantly echoed in Li Qingshan's heart. I'll wait for you above the heavens. I'll wait for the day when we stand shoulder to shoulder. The sky above Ice Sword Cliff was completely barren. There was not a single blade of grass, only ice and snow. The clouds hung low over his head, and the snow that had yet to form beautiful snowflakes fell. The wind whistled, as if it was crying. On the border between the Dragon Province and the Green Province, would people sometimes feel like they had nothing apart from an extremely distant, unreachable dream? There was only an ice-cold body in their arms, their tears frozen, and their souls numb from the bitter cold. The loneliness of the entire world surged into his heart. Something gently touched him. He looked back and saw little, and the two blood-red flames burned in the endless snow, wanting to give him some warmth to tell him that he was not alone. Gu Yenying stepped out of the wind and snow and said in surprise, "What's happened?" She took out a purple talisman and forcefully broke through the soaring dragon elder's cage of heaven and earth, rushing to the cliff. However, just now, the soaring dragon elder's presence had completely vanished. It had vanished completely. Li Qingshan held Xuanyue's cold corpse in his arms. He did not reply, nor did he know how to reply. Gu Yenying even felt a sliver of fear. A golden core elder had mysteriously vanished just like that. This would probably shake up the entire Green Province. Could it be that person from the Xianin sect? No. Even if a nascent soul cultivator had the ability to kill a golden core cultivator, it was impossible for them to do it so silently. Even an ant knew how to struggle, let alone a golden core cultivator. Did it have something to do with him? Gu Yenying glanced at Li Qingshan and then shook her head. Li Qingshan was just too weak. If he had such a terrifying background, how could he still have such a level of cultivation? Demonic beasts that had yet to condense demon cores were only at the 4th or 5th layer among Qi practitioners. Even though she was far more intelligent than ordinary people, her mind was still a mess. Tonight's events were really too strange. Leave her to me. Li Qingshan said, I promise to take her to the Dragon Province. Gu Yenying said, that's not a good place to go. You should return her to her master's side. Li Qingshan said, that's her final wish. Final wish? She's not dead yet? The corner of Gu Yenying's lips twitched. What? Li Qingshan was shocked. He checked Xuanyue's pulse in a hurry, but it was no longer beating. He looked at Gu Yenying in question. Gu Yenying waved the fan in her hand towards the sky, and a tornado rushed into the sky. The thick clouds that were originally extremely low above their heads were pierced through by the tornado. The silver-blue moonlight was like a waterfall or a searchlight that fell from the sky. It shone on the ice-sword cliff and landed on Xianyue. The surroundings were still surrounded by the howling blizzard, but this small region was so quiet and peaceful. Her body glowed with silver-blue light. Gradually, it grew brighter and brighter. Her eyelashes seemed to tremble. Under Li Qingshan's shocked gaze, Xianyue slowly opened her eyes. Where is this? She blinked and looked around. This is the ice-sword cliff. Li Qingshan felt the body in his arms gradually regain warmth. He said in surprise, what's going on? Gu Yenying said, the 9 lives cat demon's innate trash ability. Xianyue said, the one with the surname Gu, you're the trash. Gu Yenying said, there's no way to resist in a dead state. Most people would cut open their stomachs and take out their demon cores. If it's not trash, then what is it? This time, it's all thanks to this guy. She didn't know how to address Li Qingshan. He might not want others to know his human name after becoming like this. Xianyue said, Blackie, you really brought me up here? Blackie? Gu Yenying's lips curled. Li Qingshan was silent for a while, then roared, Scoundrel, why didn't you say so earlier? Making him sad for so long. Xianyue said, Meow. Ha ha ha, didn't I say it? I won't die. Li Qingshan heaved a heavy sigh. He didn't want to pay attention to her, but he was indescribably happy. At this moment, Xianyue noticed the 2 crystalline streaks of frozen tears on Li Qingshan's face. She felt like something tugged at the depths of her heart. She extended her hand and touched his cheek. Big Blacko, you're crying? Li Qingshan said, Don't flatter yourself. It's just snow water. Xianyue moved closer to Li Qingshan's face. Hee, don't be shy. It's normal for pets to cry for their masters. Oh, right. You promised to call me master. Hurry up and call me master. Chapter 102. Li Qingshan looked at his hand. It was a bottle of pills. Gu Yenying acted like she did not see it. With a wave of her hand, she kicked up a whirlwind, taking her and Xianyue along the path of the moonlight and flying into the horizon. Xianyue glanced back at Li Qingshan again before turning her head away. Her smile vanished, and tears flowed out of her eyes that were like lakes. Wait for me. I'll definitely go. Li Qingshan roared at the sky as loudly as he could. Xianyue suddenly looked back and said something loudly, but her voice was swallowed by the wind and snow. However, the shape of her lips could be vaguely seen. I'll wait for you. Gu Yenying was surprised as well. The clouds closed up beneath their feet. The final sliver of moonlight vanished from the ice-sword cliff. Li Qingshan maintained his posture of roaring at the sky. That roar was a promise to Oxen, to Xianyue, and more importantly, to himself. I'll definitely go beyond the 9 heavens. I'll definitely take you to the Dragon Province. I'll definitely find the answer. I'll definitely possess power. The waterfall flowed down, and Li Qingshan stood before the waterfall once again. The overbearing oxen was no longer beside him. nor was the girl bathing in the waterfall before him. He rubbed little Anne's head. At least you're still by my side. Without Xuanyue's guidance, he followed the original path with his memory and returned here once again. Although he had the spirit turtle's aura concealment, who knew how many dangers he encountered along the way before finally returning to the waterfall. Winter had already passed, and spring had begun. It felt like a lifetime had passed. In the short 3 months, someone had told him that the Green Province spanned 15,000 kilometers. Someone had told him, "My goal is to leave the Green Province." In the end, someone had told him, "I'll wait for you beyond the 9 heavens." Li Qingshan lowered his head and smiled. He said to Little, "And let's see how far I can go." Afterwards, he leapt into the pool. In the water, the first thing Li Qingshan did was not cultivate. Instead, he summed up his experiences and lessons, weighing the pros and cons. It was very difficult for a small shrimp to have a good ending when it was involved in a battle between sharks. The minced meat that was exposed between the teeth of the sharks could greatly increase the strength of the small shrimp, but it would also cause it to die a violent death. He could survive. It was all thanks to the protection of oxen, but this big sea monster had already left him, leaving him the target of such a huge sea monster. If he wanted to achieve this goal, he couldn't rely on luck to survive and take risks that he couldn't control. No one had an immortal halo, and even if they did, they would be easily crushed under absolute power. Not only did one have to possess the fortitude of an ox and the bravery of a tiger, but they also had to possess the depth and forbearance of a spirit turtle. He was not a coward who swallowed humiliation. Instead, it was to have lofty ambitions, to endure what others could not, to achieve what adults could not. The reason why oxen didn't kill the soaring dragon elder right from the start was that the soaring dragon elder had been killed by the soaring dragon elder. Perhaps it was to let him understand these principles. Anyone could talk about the big principles, but only after experiencing them would one truly understand and carve them in one's heart. If he hadn't heard the despair of the screams on the precipice, how would he have understood the value of strength and the meaning of friendship? He longed for even greater strength. There was no time in the mountains. The tender shoots turned into green leaves, and the flower buds bloomed with flowers. The water volume of the waterfall also became greater than in the winter, and the sound became even louder. Li Qingshan sat under the waterfall. All of these sounds, all of these changes entered his ears, but they didn't affect his mind in the slightest. Between extreme stillness and extreme movement, he was no longer just cultivating, but also experiencing the sounds and changes of nature. Perhaps to him, these two things were the same thing in the first place. He ingested the spiritual herbs one by one, and they turned into surging spiritual energy. However, to him, this was not the only thing he needed. In absolute meditation, he could vaguely sense the existence of that incomparably vast spiritual energy in the world. It was everywhere, and it ruled over all the sounds and changes of the world. When he was like a spirit turtle hiding in the deep sea, forgetting his own existence, the spiritual energy no longer repelled him and naturally merged into his body. Just like the Taoist scriptures said, strengthen the bones, weaken the will, empty the heart, strengthen the stomach. It was also like what oxen had taught him at the beginning. Filling the stomach and strengthening the body was the foundation of everything. Only by being humble and having weak will could one not be bothered by distracting thoughts, reach the true unity of heaven and man, and feel the existence of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. For humans, this was something that could only be easily achieved after the Qi condensation stage had passed the first heavenly tribulation and reached the foundation establishment stage. Otherwise, it would require a great deal of luck and comprehension. But for demons, this was an innate instinct. In the eyes of humans, the birds and beasts, in the wild were undoubtedly stupid. They only mated, hunted, and reproduced based on their instincts. However, they were a part of nature and could naturally feel many things that humans couldn't, and spiritual energy was just one of them. While humans gained intelligence, they also lost the ability to be one with nature. They had to use all kinds of methods to cultivate in order to extend their lifespan. And the lifespan of any demon was much longer than that of a human with similar strength to them. Perhaps this was the fairness of nature. Oxen had once said that Li Qingshan could only be regarded as half a demon, because while his body had become that of a demon, his mind was still that of a human's, so he was unable to sense the spiritual energy of the world. There were countless techniques in the world, and who knew how many techniques that could turn people into monsters? However, they would only be monsters, not demons. If that were the case, there would be nothing special about Oxen's design. However, he seemed to have prepared everything for Li Qingshan a long time ago. As he practiced the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, Li Qingshan could temporarily set aside his human intelligence and the distracting thoughts that came from this intelligence. He began to truly become a demon, viewing the world through the eyes of a demon and comprehending the world through the mind of a demon. After who knew how long, when the flowers began to wither, large amounts of spiritual energy gathered around Li Qingshan. Large amounts of spiritual energy gathered around Li Qingshan. The place Oxen had chosen was a place with dense spiritual energy in the first place. All of the pills had been consumed, and all of the demon chi in Li Qingshan's body surged like waves before being suppressed by the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, constantly compressed and condensed. Little, N, who played by himself to one side, suddenly raised his head and gazed at the waterfall. In the past few days, he had been waiting silently, playing with himself and never distancing himself. The spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. An invisible force flattened the turbulent water, turning it into a flawless mirror. The waterfall no longer created any splashes either. Li Qingshan had finally reached the first layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. At the same time, there was a great rumble in his soul, and his body grew larger once again, approaching 20 meters. The aura he gave off even made the waterfall shake. All of the demon chi in his body condensed into a pearl the size of a pinky. He had finally completed the most important step of becoming a demon, condensing a demon core. Li Qingshan lowered his head and gazed at the mirror like water. He gently stroked the pair of ox horns on his head. The two words, North Moon, did not seem as obvious anymore, but they seemed to have merged with the grain of the horns. They were indelible. He thought of Xianyue again. He thought of the promise that he had yet to complete. He closed his eyes gently. Wait for me. I will definitely break you out of this cage and send you to the Dragon Province. Suddenly, he opened his mouth, and the demon core flew out. It revolved around him as if it was being drawn in by some invisible force. With a thought, the demon core shot out, immediately piercing several boulders in the water. It was basically indestructible, more terrifying than any hidden weapon. Demons did not know how to refine pills, so they were born with the ability to absorb spiritual energy. Demons did not know how to forge artifacts either, so their demon cores were their most powerful weapons. Although there was the danger of someone stealing the demon core after releasing it, that could only be achieved when there was an absolute difference in strength. As a result, this danger was not exactly dangerous, as even if they did not use the demon core, they would still be finished off and their demon core extracted. It was just like when human cultivators fought. If even the flying swords they released were easily captured by their opponents, there would be no need for them to continue fighting. Li Qingshan looked at the demon core hovering before him and thought, even if I say I'm a human now, no one will believe me. He observed it closely and discovered that the demon core was not perfectly round. Instead, it was pieced together from countless tiny hexagons. It seemed to be slightly different from regular demon cores, probably due to the effects of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. However, he had only seen a single demon core before, so he was uncertain. Li Qingshan extended his right hand, and transparent ripples of water gathered in his palm, condensing into a ball of water before changing into various shapes. In terms of the 5 elements, he was a water-type demon, possessing the power to control water. He casually tossed the ball of water aside and swallowed the demon core in a single gulp. He called out, "Spirit Turtle's profound shell." A turtle shell did not appear on his back. Instead, he propped up a spherical barrier of light. At a closer glance, the sphere was the same as the demon core, also composed of countless hexagons. The raging waterfall landed on the spirit turtle's profound shell, but not a single droplet of water landed on Li Qingshan. This was the innate ability he had comprehended after condensing the demon core, but that was not all. Li Qingshan stood up and sucked in a deep breath. He raised his head and let out a wild roar. Demon chi catalyzed sound waves, kicking up fierce gales that rushed into the sky. The waterfall was blown apart, and it even left behind a deep, fan-shaped mark on the rock face. The tiger demon's fierce roar seemed impressive, but it could only cause tremors. It was used to bully the weak. It was basically useless against opponents of the same level. Although the range of his roar had been reduced, it was still powerful enough to split rocks, causing actual damage. This was the second ability he had comprehended. He named it the Tiger Demon's Slaughter Roar. The Ox Demon tramples. Li Qingshan leapt into the pool and landed heavily on the bottom. The rocks that had been battered by the water for who knew how many years shattered loudly. A circular shockwave surged into the surroundings. Wherever it passed by, the rocks would shatter loudly. It was like thousands of tons of explosives had been detonated underwater. All of the water was thrown into the air, revealing the completely shattered bottom. The ox, tiger, and turtle. 3 creatures, 3 innate abilities. The moment Li Qingshan condensed the demon core, they all awakened at the same time. Chapter 103. Returning to the world, the pond water turned into a rainstorm and fell. Under the sunlight, it formed a rainbow. Li Qingshan's eyes were tightly shut and his expression was solemn. In his body, the demon core had retracted all of its aura and kept sinking. It was like a spirit turtle retracting into its shell and sinking into the deep sea trench. After 1,000 years of hibernation, it was no longer noticed by anyone. Its existence had become a legend. When Li Qingshan opened his eyes again and leaped to the edge of the pond, he arrived in front of Little, and Li Qingshan had become the original Li Qingshan again. Perhaps it was not accurate to say that, because the current him did not have any distinct muscles, nor did he have a sharp temperament. His brilliance was restrained. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary youth from a mountain village. There was nothing special about him. However, deep in his eyes, there was a calmness and depth like the deep sea. He looked at his human hands and suddenly remembered that he was already 16 years old. When he was a demon, his concept of time would become blurry. After returning to his human form, it suddenly became clear again. He had been in this world for 16 years. What he experienced in this half a year was more exciting than the previous 15.5 years combined. From human to demon, and from demon to human. All of the demon aura on his body had been completely restrained into the demon core. It did not leak out at all. Even other cultivators would not be able to tell that he was actually a demon. It was funny to say that after he comprehended the true path of the demon, he had regained everything of a human. There were billions of living creatures in the world. Why could humans not cultivate to become demons? It was said that when a cat cultivated to become a demon, it was called a cat demon. When a tiger cultivated to become a demon, it was called a tiger demon. What was the name of a human cultivated to become a demon? Transvestite Li Qingshan felt a chill run down his spine. He decided not to think about this question anymore. He called out to Little and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting. We can go now." Little N's eyes also lit up with joy. He snuggled up to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan then took out the Sumeru ring that Oxen had left for him. He did not know what material it was made of, but it was crystal clear and did not emit any spiritual light. Now, all the true qi in his body had been transformed into demonic qi and restrained, so he could not open it at all. Although he was curious about what Oxen had left for him, he could only endure it for the time being and slowly think of a way. He tied the ring around his neck like a necklace and hid it in his clothes. He touched the charred locust wood tablet and said, "Let's go. Compared to those distant goals, I'll help you recover your human form first. But now, you have to hide again." Li Qingshan always remembered his responsibility towards this child. It was Little N who worked hard to help him at every critical moment. Even in the most dangerous of times, she did not abandon him. He wouldn't say any words of gratitude. He would just silently bury this feeling in the bottom of his heart. Moreover, the feelings and fetters between them had long since surpassed mere gratitude. He raised his head and looked at the rainbow. One figure after another appeared in his mind. Oxen, Little, and Guyenying Xianyue. Those expectations, those promises, those ambitions, he would fulfill them one by one. The mountain forest returned to its calm state once more. However, the deep pool no longer stirred up a whirlpool. It had been completely suppressed by Li Qingshan's demonic qi. This 16-year-old youth, who possessed both human and demonic qi, once again stepped into the human world. How many dangers would he be able to overcome, and how many storms would he be able to quell? Li Qingshan brought Little and to the ruins of the Black Wind stronghold. However, he could not help but frown. Since he was going to return to the human world, he naturally had to use gold and silver to pave the way. The silver notes he had on him had been destroyed in the battle at the mountain god temple and could no longer be used. He then thought of the wealth he had left behind in the Black Wind stronghold. Fortunately, he had foresight. Then, when he came to take a look, he discovered that there were traces of excavation everywhere. As expected, the secret room beneath Xiong Xiangwu's bedroom had been excavated as well. The items inside were obviously all clean. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath. What's this? A treasure-raiding officer? In Qingyang City, Yi Dachuan ravished a transfer order in joy. Ha! I've finally left this damned place. After destroying the Black Wind stronghold and adding the Dragon's Gate sect to the list of evil local organizations, he reported it to the Clear River Prefecture as a meritorious deed. After a series of investigations, it was delivered to the prefect's desk. The sacred church, even the prefect, was rather surprised that Yi Dachuan could do something like that. Unable to withstand his beloved concubine's pillow talk, he finally approved a transfer order and transferred Yi Dachuan away from Qingyang City. Of course, returning to the noisy Clear River Prefecture was impossible, but he had been transferred to the most prosperous city in the surrounding several hundred kilometers, Jiaping City. How could Yi Dachuan not ravish with joy? The advisor said, "Congratulations, master! Congratulations, master!" Yi Dachuan rejoiced for a while before saying gloomily, "I pity that brother Qingshan of mine." He was the kind of person who did not forget to dig a well. The advisor sighed. "My condolences, sir. This is all fate. No one can do anything about it. Yi Dachuan thought about it and emerged from the gloom very soon. Don't forget to burn some paper money before you leave, so that Brother Qingshan can bribe the envoys of hell, so that he can live a better life in the netherworld and join a good family in his next life. Join what good family? Li Qingshan leapt over the wall with a strange expression and landed in the courtyard. Of course it's a ghost. Yi Dachuan answered casually. His voice gradually slowed down, and he made out the appearance of the newcomer. He finally cried out and hid behind the armchair in a flash. The advisor said, "Sir, calm down, calm down. It's broad daylight, so how can there be any ghosts? Sheriff Li has returned." Yi Dachuan glanced at Li Qingshan. All he saw was the blazing summer sun casting a long shadow beneath Li Qingshan's feet. Just now, he let out a sigh of relief and emerged from behind the armchair. He grabbed Li Qingshan's hand. "Brother Qingshan, you've finally returned. Where have you been all this time?" As he said that, his eyes welled up with tears. Li Qingshan pulled his hand back. "I was slightly injured, so I went into secluded cultivation in the mountains for a while. Do you think I'm dead?" Yi Dachuan said, "As long as you're alive, as long as you're alive." Afterwards, he told him the whole story. As it turned out, news of Feng Zhang leading a group of first-rate masters to surround and attack Li Qingshan had spread like wildfire. In the end, all of them vanished into the mountains together. In these few months, many people entered the mountains to search, but they could only find the mountain god temple that had been burnt to ashes. The remaining bones could not be distinguished at all, so rumors spread everywhere. Some said that after Feng Zhang obtained the spiritual ginseng, he killed everyone to silence them and then went into hiding. There were also people who said that it was another expert who killed all of them. But no matter which rumor it was, Li Qingshan was a dead man. No one thought that he could survive under such circumstances, so everyone thought that he was dead. However, they did not expect that in the end, Li Qingshan would actually walk out of the mountains, and he was the only one to do so. "It's good that you're back. You can come with me to Jiaping. Look, what's this?" Yi Dachuan smugly slapped the transfer order, his fat face smiling so widely that it almost disappeared. He was happy from the bottom of his heart that Li Qingshan could return. Li Qingshan was his lucky general. When Li Qingshan saw the transfer order, he asked curiously, "Jiaping County's lieutenant, doesn't that mean I've been demoted by half a rank?" Regular, smaller cities did not have county lieutenants. Only larger ones would have them, with some even having 2 or 3. They were below the district magistrate, so they obviously could not compare to the authority that the district magistrate wielded. Yi Dachuan said, "That's something you don't know. Better to beg in a gold nest than to claim yourself king in a dog nest. What kind of profit is there in a crappy place like Qingyang City? Even if you make money, you won't even be able to find a decent brothel to drink in." As Li Qingshan listened to the district magistrate talk about eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling, he could not help but laugh. He felt a sense of realism from returning to the human world. Perhaps it was the 3 vulgarities, but weren't these the things that humans pursued? However, the 2 words Jiaping City made his heart skip a beat. He rubbed the Iron Wolf tablet in his bosom. The Scarlet Hawk commander, Old Wang, had once said that if he survived, he could report to Zhuozhibo in Jiaping City and become a Hawkwolf guard. However, he had not considered this thoroughly yet, so he was unable to make a decision right now. Since he had killed Feng Zhang, he might have some colleagues or acquaintances in Jiaping City. Zhuozhibo, who had sent Feng Zhang to Qingyang, might not have a good opinion of him either. The advisor really was an advisor, after all. Although he did not know so much, he had still thought of this step. He reminded Yi Dachuan that arrogant Feng Zhang came from Jiaping City, and even now, we still don't know where he is. The reason for his disappearance was obviously because of Li Qingshan. He could not guarantee that the Hawkwolf Guard would not investigate this. Yi Dachuan's expression changed as well. Yeah, Brother Qingshan, you have to be careful, or you better run. Just pretend none of us have seen you return. With his identity, he still did not know that Feng Zhang had already been dismissed by Wang Pushi. The disappearance of a Hawkwolf Guard was a matter of great importance. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your concern, sir, but there's no need to worry about this. I have something I'd like to ask you about." "What?" Li Qingshan said. "Who dug up the Black Wind stronghold?" It was impossible for such a great project to go unnoticed. No matter where he went, he could not go without money. Plucking hair from the bottom of a tiger came with a price. Yi Dachuan said, Iron Fist brought people. Qingshan, don't be rash." "There's nothing to be rash about. I just want my money back." "Are they bold enough to refuse?" Li Qingshan was rather confused by Yi Dachuan's attitude. He had destroyed the Black Wind stronghold and the Dragon's Gate sect. Would Iron Fist still be bold enough to make things difficult for him? Yi Dachuan said, "A protector has come to Iron Fist recently. He seems to be investigating the whereabouts of that Bird Hall Lord. Lu Hong dug up those items to show his respect. I heard he's an innate master as well, so he might not be easy to deal with." Li Qingshan said, "I'll be careful." With that, he vanished from the wall. He crossed over the many roofs and arrived in Iron Fist. However, he was in no hurry to show himself. Instead, he listened attentively. He withdrew his demon chi and assumed human form. Although his senses were not as sharp as a demon, they were still far superior to regular people. Within a range of 300 meters, he could even hear the sound of a mosquito. He immediately found Lu Hong's location. Chapter 104. A visit to collect debts. An old man in maroon robes with a goatee checked their pulses one by one. He would shake his head at times and nod at others. Sometimes his eyes would shine, and sometimes his hands would move up and down. To the left of the sacred hall was Lu Hong of the Iron Fist, while Li Long stood behind him, ready to pour him more tea at any time. A group of disciples of the Iron Fist stood in a human wall, blocking off many people of various ages and genders. They all seemed to be the relatives of these children. They all looked at their children nervously. If they received a nod from the old man, they would smile from ear to ear. If the old man shook his head, they would become dejected. This was an important figure from the prefectural city of Clear River that was thousands of kilometers away, a mighty protector of the Iron Fist. His martial arts had reached perfection. If they could gain his recognition, then their children would truly reach the heavens in a single step. Li Qingshan saw the old man with a single glance. The old man's aura was heavy, slightly more powerful than Feng Zhang's. He really was an innate master, but he was not a dangerous figure. If he demonified, he was confident he could kill the old man in a single strike. Even if he maintained his human form, it would not be too troublesome. All he needed was some effort. He was only curious about what he was doing. Lu Hong sat beside the old man. Although they were both old, even ignorant children could tell who was stronger or weaker. Lu Hong sighed inside. Recently, many impressive figures had come to Qingyang City. Ever since he came to Qingyang City to retire, it had already been many years since he last saw Protector Yen Song. Speaking of which, with his second-rate martial arts, he had only seen him a few times in the past. The last time he saw him was during the main branch leader's birthday banquet over a decade ago. Back then, he was still in his prime, and Protector Yen was like this. Now, he had already become an old man, but Protector Yen did not seem to have changed at all. Lu Hong said, "Protector Yen, rest up. Please have some tea." To his side, Li Long filled up the tea in a hurry. Although Hall Chief Wu had died, canceling his plan to leave Qingyang City, he was happy instead. He never liked that Hall Chief Wu very much in the first place. He had been rude to his master, so he deserved to die. In the blink of an eye, Protector Yen had arrived. Not only was he more skilled in martial arts, but his bearing was much steadier too. He was arrogant, but he did not show it. He could even directly take him to the Clear River Prefecture. Yen Song stopped and leisurely took a sip of tea. "I'm old. My bones are not good enough." He let the children stand under the sun. Lu Hong said, "Zhangduos, don't worry. You can be considered a senior in the sect. That surnamed Wu is useless, so how can he blame you? I will make things clear with the leader." Yen Song was in a good mood. Of course, it was because he had received a lot of benefits from Lu Hong. He did not care too much about silver, but one of the ancient paintings came from a famous artist. It could be said that it was hard to obtain, even with 1,000 taels of gold. It was exactly what he wanted. Yen Song said, "Then thank you, Protector. What do you think of these children?" Yen Song said, "There are still a few good seedlings among these children. Although I don't know whether they can practice qi or not, they're good enough to practice martial arts at the very least. If this were Clear River City, the children with better talent would have been scavenged away a long time ago. Even a good seedling has to be fought over. How can they be picked so casually?" Lu Hong said, "It's all thanks to the wisdom of the leader." At this moment, Yen Song raised his head and saw a gap in the human wall formed by the Iron Fist disciples. A young man walked in, but he only glanced at him before ordering, "Let him out. He's too old." And he was far too ordinary. There was nothing worthy of his attention at all. However, the Iron Fist disciples did not stop the young man, as he said. Instead, they parted in fear. Yen Song was rather confused. He saw Li Long and even Lu Hong widen their eyes. "Li Qingshan!" The crowd broke into a discussion. "Isn't that Li Qingshan? The Black Tiger Li Qingshan? I heard he died. Why has he returned?" Li Qingshan could be regarded as famous in Qingyang City now. Li Qingshan walked over and waved his hand with a smile. "Sect Master Lu, long time no see. You must be some protector. It's an honor to meet you." Yen Song's eyebrows twitched. He remembered the other reason he had come. Was it not because of this young man? The Holy Church Lu Hong said, awkwardly, "Why, you've returned." Li Qingshan cut straight to the point. "Yeah, I've come to be an unwelcome guest this time. Please return a few items to me, Sect Master Lu. If you want to exchange them for silver notes, I'd rather take less. After all, it wasn't easy for you to dig them out." Right now, Li Qingshan seemed very gentle. He did not have the slightest air of malice. Lu Hong looked at Yen Song. Yen Song sipped his tea and said indifferently, "You're Li Qingshan? You're still bold enough to return. I'll ask a question now, and you'll answer one question. If you don't answer one question, I'll slap you. How did Hall Chief Wu die?" He did not even stand up. This was not a person worthy of him standing up. Moreover, Li Qingshan's disrespect made him rather annoyed. Li Qingshan was actually bold enough to ask him for something, and there were many signs that proved that Hall Chief Wu's death was closely related to this person. He obviously would not be polite to his enemy. Was Li Qingshan hiding his strength? Perhaps. But even if Li Qingshan was a first-rate master, or even an innate master who had reached the qi refining stage, so what? With his qi refining stage to strength, how could he put a few people in his eyes? Li Qingshan was not unfamiliar with this kind of behavior. It was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. He believed that he could control the situation and that everyone had to listen to his arrangements and be at his mercy. However, When Li Qingshan saw those figures who soared through the sky and saw Yen Song's current appearance, he found it extremely hilarious. He was like a toad croaking loudly, ordering around a swarm of flies, believing himself to be a king just because he pointed his finger at them. So Li Qingshan laughed. At least I'm a frog, and a very strong one at that. The corner of Lu Hong's eye twitched. After not seeing him for a few months, this brat went out for a walk. He originally thought that he would restrain himself a little, but he did not expect that when he came back, he would still be like this. On the surface, he looked calm, but in his bones, he was extremely arrogant. Yen Song's expression turned cold. "What are you laughing at?" Li Qingshan said, "When I see something funny, I will naturally laugh." Yen Song slowly stood up and said, "Try laughing again, and try." Li Qingshan said, "Don't talk nonsense. I let you eat all my things. Now spit them out for me." Without any warning, Yen Song crossed the distance of several feet in one step and arrived in front of Li Qingshan. He raised his hand and ruthlessly slapped down. He wanted to slap Li Qingshan so that he would never laugh again in this life. He wanted him to know that provoking the iron fist had a price to pay. Pa! A resounding slap. Yen Song tilted his head to the side, his old face rippling. His eyes were wide open, and one of his teeth flew out. His heart was full of disbelief. He clearly did not feel a trace of inner force or true qi from Li Qingshan, but his speed was so fast and fierce. Could it be that he was a body refining expert? But he did not look like a body refining expert at all. When Li Qingshan saw that Yen Song wanted to slap him, he did not feel much anger in his heart. Instead, he sighed. Yen Song's originally fast and fierce movements were now so slow in his eyes, so slow that he almost doubted whether his estimation was wrong or not. And because Yen Song underestimated his opponent, he revealed many flaws. Of course, Li Qingshan would not let him go. He slapped Yen Song's face, his smile unchanged. "If you don't spit it out, I will hit you until you spit it out." Protector Yen. Lu Hong was dumbfounded. The inviolable protector, Yen, was actually slapped in front of so many people. He was even more surprised that Li Qingshan had become so strong. This kind of growth speed was simply too frightening. The crowd also cried out in surprise. They were willing to bring their children here because Yen Song had revealed his true skills. He had destroyed a wooden pillar that was one jang away with a single punch. In their eyes, it was simply the means of an immortal. Li Long could not help but rub his eyes. Was this really the cowherd boy from Snail Village? He felt that he did not know this fellow villager more and more. Yen Song was furious. He took a step back, adjusted his posture, and all the qi in his body surged into his fists. Pa! When Li Qingshan saw this posture, how could he give him a chance to attack? He took a step forward and slapped down again. Li Qingshan's strength was so great that Yen Song was dizzy from the slap. The qi that he had just gathered dispersed, but he was unwilling to give up and circulated it again, wanting to kill Li Qingshan. Pa! The third slap came down. Close combat with bare fists was like this. Once you were at a disadvantage, it was very difficult to get back. Pa! 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 The slap was extremely loud, shaking the entire martial arts field. Other than the slap, there was no other sound. Whenever Yen Song showed any signs of counterattacking, Li Qingshan would hit him without holding back. The reason why he chose to slap was not just to return a tooth for a tooth, but also because he did not have any killing intent, so he could not attack with great force. However, if he wanted to suppress Yen Song, hitting his head was the best choice. The slap was not fatal, and it could produce a concussive and dizzying effect, disrupting Yen Song's movements. It was truly the best method. Yen Song retreated step by step, and Li Qingshan advanced step by step. Clang! Yen Song sat back down on his armchair, protecting his head and face, and called out, "Stop hitting me!" After taking a few slaps, he instead woke up from his rage, and it turned into fear. Li Qingshan could kill him. And the older people got, the more they cherished their lives. As expected, Li Qingshan stopped. "Hand over my things." Yen Song's face alternated between pale and red, and he roared, "Lu Hong, what are you still standing there for?" At the same time, he quietly reached into his bosom. He also had a talisman as a trump card. In front of so many people, he had lost so much face. If he did not take revenge, he was not a man. Li Qingshan said, "I advise you not to use it." Yen Song's hand trembled. Li Qingshan said, "You want to slap my face, so I will slap your face. You want to kill me, so I can only kill you." Li Qingshan's words were calm and steady, and he did not even stop Yen Song from taking the talisman. Yen Song pinched the corner of the talisman, and his expression changed even more. For a moment, he could not take it out. Chapter 105. Subduing through force. Li Qingshan smiled silently. He did not admit it, nor did he deny it. The sacred church Yen Song said, "Black Wolf Guard Feng Zhang also died to your hands." Originally, he never would have believed something as ridiculous as that. A Black Wolf Guard, 5 first-rate masters, and a large group of second- and third-rate masters would all die to a nameless kid. However, he believed it a little now. Li Qingshan still did not answer. Yen Song drew his hand back. There were no talismans in his hand. Li Qingshan smiled. "Are we not going to fight anymore?" Yen Song said, "You're dead for sure. There's no need for me to waste things on a dead person." Li Qingshan said, "Oh, what do you mean?" Yen Song said, "Do you think you can still live after killing a Black Wolf Guard?" Li Qingshan did not deny it. "There's no need for you to worry about that. Please hand over my things." Yen Song paled. Lu Hong went up and pulled Li Qingshan to one side. He pleaded, "Qingshan, I didn't know you were still alive, which was why I dug those things out. If you want silver, I'll give it to you, all right?" Li Qingshan laid out his hands. "That's what I was thinking." He wanted to reason with them, but what could he do when they would always be unreasonable, insisting on talking with their fists? Lu Hong shot a glance at them, and the Iron Fist disciples dispersed everyone. The large stadium emptied out. At this moment, Yi Dachuan arrived in a palanquin. When he saw everyone's expressions and the red marks that had yet to fade from Yen Song's face, he already had a rough idea of what had happened. He felt great inside. A few days ago, they had organized a banquet for Yen Song, but this damn protector had been so condescending. Now he knew how powerful he was. He coughed pretentiously. "Protector, Yen, do you have some sort of misunderstanding with Sheriff Li? As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. I'll play the host this afternoon and act as a peacemaker for the two of you." "The sacred church," Yen Song interrupted him. "There's no need. I have nothing to say to a dead person." Li Qingshan said, "Say that again." "A defeated general actually dares to be so arrogant. Do you really think I don't dare to be ruthless?" Yen Song snorted coldly, but did not dare to speak again. As the saying goes, the situation is stronger than the person. Yi Dachuan asked curiously, "What dead person?" After understanding the whole story, he was indeed worried about Li Qingshan. Li Long whispered, "Qingshan, you should leave quickly." Yen Song coldly stared at him. Li Qingshan sneered in his heart. "Do you really think that I don't have long to live?" He said indifferently, "I just happen to be going to Jopping City to join the Hawkwolf Guard." "What?" Everyone was shocked. "What a joke." "Humph." Yen Song sneered. He wanted to say, "You," but when he thought about how powerful Li Qingshan really was, he could only snort disdainfully. Yi Dachuan said, "What's going on?" Li Qingshan said, Old Wang of the Red Eagle Commander wants me to report to Zhuozhibwa at Jiaping City. Yan Song cried out, How's that possible? You killed Feng Zhang, so you're a sworn enemy of the Hawkwolf Guard. Yi Dachuan said, Is that true? Li Qingshan took out the Black Wolf Waste tablet and waved it around. Feng Zhang has already been expelled from the Hawkwolf Guard. You can basically say that I'm taking over his position. Maintaining a low profile was a lurking wild beast. It was for the sake of hunting down prey at a crucial moment, rather than allowing some clown to look down on him and look down on him. In the end, it would lead to a whole lot of trouble. That would not be maintaining a low profile, but foolishness. If you lowered yourself to the ground, you could not blame others for stepping on you. Displaying sufficient strength and might was the only way to reduce trouble. Lu Hong and Li Long exchanged glances. Neither of them said anything. Just what kind of luck was this? Half a year ago, Li Qingshan was still a country bumpkin, only able to contend with ruffians and scoundrels. Now, he could already join the Hawkwolf Guard that struck fear into the hearts of people of the Jianghu. He had basically risen through the heavens. Li Qingshan was at ease. Yan Song refused to believe it, but he had to believe it. After coming to Qingyang, he asked around and also learnt that the person who took away Li Qingshan in the restaurant that day was the Scarlet Wolf Commander, Hua Sengzan. He took Feng Zhang and Li Qingshan to see Wang Pushi. He could not understand why the two of them would come to such a crappy place, but the outcome was very clear. In the end, Li Qingshan returned, but Feng Zhang died a violent death. The two of them did not help their own man, Feng Zhang. The meaning behind this was thought-provoking, but it was very clear now. Wang Pushi had actually expelled Feng Zhang on the spot, while Li Qingshan actually referred to Wang Pushi as Old Wang. Was he connected to Wang Pushi somehow? When he looked at Li Qingshan again, his gaze had already changed. Originally, he thought that even if the Hawkwolf Guard did not come looking for Li Qingshan, he would still find a way to protect him. But he could not help but give up on this thought now. In this world, only the Hawkwolf Guard would take revenge on others. Who would be bold enough to take revenge on the Hawkwolf Guard? The more he thought about it, the more he regretted being too rash. The other party was so young, yet he was already so powerful. Furthermore, he was able to escape from such a dangerous situation. Who knew what kind of person was standing behind him? How could he really treat him like an ordinary kid? Fantastic! Yi Dachuan was overjoyed. I was originally worried that you wouldn't be able to go to Jiaping. You can come with me now. Li Qingshan said, I'm still considering whether I should go or not. Yi Dachuan said, Why wouldn't you? Joining the Hawkwolf Guard is great. You don't even have to pay to go to the brothels or gambling dens. Li Qingshan sweated slightly. So this was the benefit of joining the Hawkwolf Guard. If Old Wang were here, he might just smack you to death with a metal ruler. Yi Dachuan said, It's getting late. Let's go. Let's talk while we eat. Why would Lu Hong let Yi Dachuan make the arrangements? He had already made his disciples prepare everything. Yan Song's expression changed for a while before he actually sat down as well. He no longer said anything. I have nothing to say to a dead man. Afterwards, Yi Dachuan and Lu Hong mediated between the two. After a few cups, Yan Song used his tipsiness to find a way out of the situation. He clinked his cup with Li Qingshan and said awkwardly, young hero Li. He could no longer pursue the matter regarding Hall Chief Wu. Even their main branch leader would scold him for offending a Hawkwolf Guard over a Hall Chief. Li Qingshan smiled. Protector Yen, just now, I've offended you. I'll punish myself with 3 cups to apologize to you. He downed all the alcohol in his cup before drinking 3 more. He had no reason, nor did he want to fall out with others. It would obviously be for the best if it could be resolved. There was a series of praises from the table, and Yen Song's complexion eased up a lot. Lu Hong said, "We're all people of the Jianghu, so we're all hot-tempered. Bumping into each other is completely normal, but as the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. Isn't it better to make friends than to make enemies? I've lived for so long, and although my martial arts are nothing special, I've relied on this cultivation method to live out my remaining years in peace." Yi Dachuan said, Yeah, that's the principle. They all secretly praised Li Qingshan's sense of propriety. He relied on his strength, but did not intimidate the weak. His conduct was nothing like a 16-year-old teenager. The two of them were both experienced in battle, so they were first-rate at livening up the atmosphere. With Li Qingshan's attitude, they chimed in one after another, and the atmosphere became harmonious. Yen Song shamelessly asked about Li Qingshan's relationship with Wang Puxi, which was also something everyone was curious about. For a moment, none of them said anything, only looking at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan did not want to assume the might of a tiger. "So that old Wang is called Wang Puxi. I'm not familiar with him." Everyone was disappointed, but Yen Song refused to believe it. "Wang Puxi doesn't know you, so why would he take such good care of you and expel Feng Zhang for you?" Then he asked, "The two of them are usually elusive in Qingyang City, so why have they come to Qingyang City?" Li Qingshan had no intention of hiding anything either. He roughly explained the matter of Gu Yenying, but he hid the topic of the Dark Queen and the Cat Demon, the White Hawk Commander, the Bodhi Brew. Yen Song gulped. To him, that was a figure of legend. Their power and authority were so great that he could not even imagine it. And the renowned Bodhi Brew, only their main branch leader, was fortunate enough to drink a cup of it. The slight doubt he originally had was completely dispelled. He could completely imagine just how furious he would be if an insensible subordinate held him back when he wanted to curry up to the main branch leader. "Qingshan, your future prospects are limitless now that you've caught the eye of Commander Gu." Just now, his resentment from being slapped in the face by Li Qingshan was immediately swept away. When he looked at Li Qingshan again, there was even a hint of respect in his gaze. He was like a petty bureaucrat who had heard that a certain colleague of his had been received by the leader of the country, and they had even conversed in a friendly manner. He could not help but feel deep veneration. What was the point of fussing over these small grievances? Perhaps. Li Qingshan discovered that from top to bottom, Iron Fist was very adaptable to the circumstances, but he felt rather mixed inside. The woman in snow-white clothes that seemed extraordinarily carefree had only invited him to a cup of alcohol, yet she had completely changed the opinion of an innate master. It also made him realize the difference between them. Yi Dachuan sucked in a deep breath. That's one of the 3 pillars of the Rui Commandery. He had spent many years in the prefectural city of Clear River. Although he was neither skilled in the arts nor in the martial arts, he was very familiar with the gossip and rumors on the streets. Li Qingshan asked in surprise, "What are the 3 pillars of the Rui Commandery?" Yen Song said, "The Marquis of Rui, Jiang Fu, the White Hawk Commander, Gu Yenying, and the great General Han Angua. They belong to the schools of Moism, legalism, and the military respectively. Jiang Fu manages government affairs and commands the 9 prefectures. Gu Yenying manages the Hawkwolf Guard and is in charge of punishment and supervision. Han Angua commands the army of the Han family and is in charge of military authority. Every single one of them is a figure of great authority. They're commonly referred to as the 3 pillars of the Rui Commandery. I heard that among them, Commander Gu has the greatest background." Yi Dachuan said, "Even if we don't compare their backgrounds, The Hawkwolf Guard is responsible for supervising the officers of the army. This Commander Gu is the one that no one dares to provoke the least. Qingshan, if you can get a promotion from her, you'll immediately rise up. Li Qingshan silently memorized this information. As it turned out, the Hawkwolf Guard belonged to the school of legalism, those who originated from the school of Confucianism and the school of the military were probably not the scholar Qiuba. How could someone who stood on par with Gu Yening be a regular person? The waters of this world were basically unfathomable, but of course, most people would never have the opportunity to come into contact with any of the three in their entire lives. At the same time, he also felt that reconciling with Yen Song was the correct decision. Although having more friends did not necessarily mean having more paths, he definitely knew a lot of information that he did not know about since he came from the prefectural city of Clear River. This information was extremely important to him, even directly related to whether he wanted to go to Jiaping City or not. Chapter 106. The 10th layer of Qi practitioner Li Qingshan gained a better understanding of the structure of the government. This was basically a separation of three powers. Although it seemed very crude, that was because it was just too vast, so it was impossible to govern it in a meticulous manner. The Holy Church among them. The Hawkwolf Guard was rather similar to the Ming Dynasty's 2 ministries and 1 guard. They even possessed a little more authority. He could not help but say, so the Hawkwolf Guard is actually so impressive. Yi Dachuan said, yeah, so don't hesitate. A great future awaits you. Yen Song said, eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling for free is a small matter. If you become a Hawkwolf Guard, you'll still lack that bit of money. Qingshan, you don't seem like someone who craves power either, but the Hawkwolf Guard has many spiritual artifacts, spiritual stones, pills, and cultivation methods. There probably isn't a single Qi practitioner who wouldn't be interested. Li Qingshan said, Qi practitioners? Then what are innate masters? Li Qingshan asked for guidance modestly, so Yen Song calmed down even more. He was willing to be a beacon of light. Moreover, this was only common knowledge. As it turned out, there were extremely few people in the world who could cultivate true Qi right from the start. They were so-called Qi practitioners. However, the requirement for talent to become a Qi practitioner was extremely high. Most people could not take this path. However, there was another path, which was to cultivate inner force. Inner force basically had no rigid requirements for talent. As long as they were not idiots and were willing to put in the effort, basically anyone could cultivate inner force. The inner force that regular cultivators practiced was equivalent to a simplified, weakened version of Qi methods. It lowered the requirement for talent, making it easier for them to grasp the basics. Basically anyone could practice it, but the inner force they produced was nowhere close to the effects of true Qi. That was because they had not truly opened up their meridians. Inner force would be bound by the meridians, unable to nourish the organs, much less leave the body. However, as long as they cultivated their inner force to the limit and made a breakthrough, they could convert it into true Qi and become a Qi practitioner, which was also commonly known as an innate master. The path of practicing Qi was divided into 10 layers in total. Moreover, it was not as crude as the division between first-rate and second-rate in Jianghu. Sometimes, it was very difficult to accurately say whether someone was a first-rate or a second-rate expert. This was because the martial arts they practiced were different, and the effects of their martial arts varied greatly. The paths they took were also very different. However, in the Tao of Qi refinement, no matter what kind of technique one cultivated, the goal was to clear the 8 extraordinary meridians, namely the Yang Heel Meridian, Yin Heel Meridian, Yang Linking Meridian, Yin Linking Meridian, Girdle Meridian, Chong Meridian, Ren Meridian, and Du Meridian. These 8 meridians were not directly connected to the lungs, nor did they coordinate with the inside and outside of the body. Therefore, they were called the extraordinary meridians. Each meridian connected the entire body, connecting several major acupoints. With each meridian connected, one's shinshi would grow a little stronger, and that would be a realm higher. Once the 8 extraordinary meridians were completely connected, one would reach the 9th layer of qi refinement. If he wanted to reach the 10th layer, it would be even more difficult. He needed to completely connect the 12 standard meridians, which were the 3 yin meridians of the hand, the 3 yang meridians of the hand, the 3 yin meridians of the foot, and the 3 yang meridians of the foot. These 12 meridians intersected with one another, connecting the hands, feet, lungs, and the 5 elements. It was extremely easy for him to suffer from qi deviation and damage his lungs. However, if he could overcome this, he would reach the great perfection of the 10th layer of qi refinement and reach the peak of qi practitioners. However, Li Qingshan had not even connected a single meridian as he walked the path of the demons. There were no such things as meridians at all. There were all sorts of demons, and there were very few that were similar to humans. Could you ask a snake or a piece of bamboo to have the 8 extraordinary meridians? However, when he thought up to there, another thought appeared in his head. After suppressing the ox demon and tiger demon with the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression, he was truly a human now. He had returned to his original state. Was it really impossible for him to practice qi? As it seemed, he needed to find a method for practicing qi and try it out. With this thought, he embarked on an even stranger and unique path. When he reached there, Yen Song even grumbled about how the status of people who practiced martial arts was just too low. This was because when he reached the innate realm and could practice qi, he was already quite old. Although he had converted his profound inner force into true qi and opened his yang heel meridian, breaking through to the 2nd layer, he was unable to take another step forward and open his yin heel meridian, breaking through to the 3rd layer. Everyone comforted him. Yen Song said, "Practicing the body is powerful, but it's not the right path at the end of the day. Qingshan, you're so young, so you'll definitely be able to reach the 3rd layer, or even the 4th or 5th layer. If you can open your girdle meridian and condense a sea of qi, reaching the 6th layer, you'll have the right to be promoted to a Scarlet Wolf Guard. You'll be able to hold a post in the prefectural city of Clear River." Yen Song's insight was sharp. He could tell that it was impossible for Li Qingshan's true qi to reach the 2nd layer, yet he was able to defeat him so easily. That meant Li Qingshan had taken the path of practicing the body. From a certain perspective, the external martial arts of the Jianghu were simplified versions of practicing the body. However, practicing the body was the same as practicing the external martial arts of the Jianghu. It was powerful in the early stages, but it had no future. It was very difficult to reach higher realms of cultivation, so it was not valued. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your warning, Protector Yen. I will pay attention in the future." However, as a demon, it was impossible for him not to practice the body. However, with that, the situation before him became much clearer. He wondered what layer of qi practitioner he could rival as a demon. As a Black Hawk commander, Zhui Zhibua of Jiaping City was roughly at the level of a low-level Scarlet Wolf Guard. He was roughly at the 6th layer and had condensed a sea of qi. Although he did not know whether a human who had condensed a sea of qi or a demon who had refined a demon core was more powerful, the difference should not be too great. At the very least, he would be able to escape. As a result, he made up his mind to pay a visit to Jiaping City. As the saying went, cultivation in the 6 doors of fans was good. The resources there were indeed tempting him. Li Qingshan then asked, Protector Yin, do you have any methods for practicing qi? Yen Song said awkwardly, methods for practicing qi are a secret among the sects and clans. They are not taught to outsiders. Li Qingshan also knew that his question was rather abrupt. He had just reconciled with someone, so asking for a method for practicing qi was rather inappropriate. He smiled and said, "My apologies for being abrupt." He drank a cup of wine and said no more. Yen Song thought about it for a while, troubled. "However, if you really want it, then I can only reluctantly accept it." Li Qingshan was overjoyed. He toasted Yen Song a few more times, while Yi Dachuan and Lu Hong congratulated him as well. Li Long revealed an extremely envious expression. He thought, sure enough, the strong are revered in this world. Li Qingshan had slapped this old man a few times, yet he had earned a method for practicing qi instead. After the meal, Yen Song passed on a method for practicing qi to Li Qingshan in a quiet room for practicing qi. The name of the method was the innate method of practicing qi. It was also split into 9 layers. However, practicing the 9th layer would only allow one to reach the 3rd layer of qi practitioner. It was obvious that it was not some impressive method. Yen Song told him about this openly. This innate method of practicing qi is only for laying down a foundation. With your talent, Qingshan, you will definitely be able to find a better method to practice in the future. Methods for practicing qi were very valuable. They could make many people shed blood for them. However, they were not exactly valuable. In particular, basically everyone knew about the innate method of practicing qi among qi practitioners. Those who did not know about it were mostly because they had come into contact with better and stronger methods for forging artifacts right from the start. The most valuable thing was not the method, but the person who practiced it. Basically, as long as you had the talent for practicing qi, there would be countless people in the world who would be willing to teach you this basic method for forging artifacts. As long as Li Qingshan joined the Hawkwolf Guard, he would obviously be able to obtain it. Yen Song could tell that Li Qingshan's future was limitless, so there was no harm in doing him a favor like this. Thank you, Protector Yen. Li Qingshan's main objective was to see whether he could practice qi or not. The quality of this cultivation method was a trivial matter. Moreover, although the power and advancement of a basic cultivation method like this would not be particularly great, it probably had the characteristic of being easy to grasp, which instead suited him the most. He had some other guesses. Were all abilities and cultivation methods divided into 9 layers? All the abilities and cultivation methods he practiced right now were all standard 9 layers. He had asked little and before, and even the path of white bone and great beauty was the same. Yen Song bid farewell and left, continuing to choose disciples. He left Li Qingshan to cultivate in the quiet room. In the quiet room, incense that could calm the mind burned. Li Qingshan sat with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. He silently comprehended the wonders of the innate method of practicing qi. He had the experience of practicing qi in the past, and he had even managed to condense true qi to a relatively strong level. However, in the end, it was all for the sake of converting true qi into demon qi. Its final objective was to turn him into a demon. It was not a proper method of practicing qi at all. Only now did he truly come into contact with the cultivation methods of human qi practitioners. After comprehending it, he discovered that it was much simpler than the abilities that Oxen had taught him. In particular, the first 3 layers did not even touch on any meridians. They only taught him how to sense and gather true qi. It was just like how a secondary school student would learn from a primary school student's textbooks. It was extremely simple. In less than 2 hours, Li Qingshan condensed another strand of true qi demonstrating his extraordinary talent once again. At the very least, he had the right to practice qi. If he had been born in the prefectural city of Clear River, he probably would have been accepted as a disciple a long time ago, embarking on the path of a qi practitioner. However, before he could celebrate, the strand of true qi in the demon core was sucked in and converted into demon qi. Li Qingshan could not help but become dumbfounded. Was he wrong? He thought about it again and began practicing the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression. His mind remained still as he absorbed the spiritual qi of the world. 6 whole hours passed, and the demon qi in the demon core had almost reached saturation. Of course, even if he cultivated for another 60 hours, it would be impossible for him to truly saturate the demon core with demon qi. Li Qingshan practiced the innate method of practicing qi again, and the true qi he had condensed was devoured by the demon core again, converted into demon qi. However, there was still some left for him. However, he ravished with joy inside. This proved that his guess and choice were correct. He really could practice qi like a regular person. The sky gradually darkened. Li Qingshan cultivated persistently, gathering true qi bit by bit with great difficulty. He was like laborers under the cruel exploitation of the capitalists, toiling arduously. Most of the fruits of their labor were taken away from them. Of course, this great capitalist was still Li Qingshan himself, so it was not exactly a waste. Chapter 107. Sumeru Ring Luhong said, "Qingshan is cultivating. Don't disturb him." Yen Song said, "Xiaolong, you need to cultivate properly too. Although you don't have the talent to directly practice qi, as long as you break through to the innate realm, your inner force can be converted into true qi. It'll be very easy for you to break through to the second layer. You won't necessarily lose to others." After Li Qingshan finished off Hall Chief Wu, Lu Hong begged Yen Song to take Li Long to the headquarters of the Iron Fist in Clear River City. If that were not the case, Lu Hong would not have spent so much money to curry favor with Yen Song. Li Long said politely, "Yes, Protector." The 3 of them gazed at the door of the room. They all had different thoughts. The rooster crowed, and the world turned white. Only after an entire night did Li Qingshan open his eyes. He silently sensed the true qi flowing through his body and felt delighted. He had finally completed the first layer of the innate method of practicing qi. However, this did not mean he could complete the cultivation method easily. The higher one progressed with any cultivation method, the more difficult it would be. The amount of time and effort required would increase exponentially as well. It was a pity that he had already eaten all the unknown pills Xianyue had given him. Otherwise, he was confident he could complete the first 3 layers of the innate method of practicing qi with just a single one. He could even clear the yang heel meridian and break through to the second layer. The path of cultivation was still the same: wealth, companionship, method, and place. Wealth came first, but the wealth here was not gold or silver, but spiritual pills and immortal herbs. No matter what kind of ability or cultivation method he practiced, it was essentially a process of gathering spiritual qi. If he wanted to practice martial arts, he needed to have a full stomach. If he wanted to cultivate, he needed to eat the bait. External pills were indispensable. Although a person's talent and ability to comprehend were very important, it was impossible for his cultivation to increase drastically as soon as he comprehended it, unless he had already accumulated a lot beforehand. However, even if it was weak, it was still very important to him. He took out the cursive sword calligraphy and injected his true qi into it. Sure enough, the cursive sword calligraphy accepted his true qi. Although he couldn't even draw a single stroke in the end, it was still a great encouragement to him. This meant that the talismans on him could be activated and used. The biggest difference between humans and animals was how they made and used tools. Demons strengthened themselves, while humans relied on external objects. If one could not directly absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, one would have to concoct pills and medicines. If one did not have a strong body, one would have to craft spiritual artifacts and talismans. This was the strength of humans. Li Qingshan wanted to use this advantage as much as he could. Moreover, if he wanted to open the soaring dragon elder's Sumeru ring, he needed this power. He meditated for a while to recover the true qi he had consumed. Zhang Xian took out the ring and wore it on his middle finger before infusing his shenqi into it. Even though he knew that it was impossible for him to open it, he still had to give it a try. Li Qingshan's genuine qi flowed into the ring like water circled around the ring and flowed back into Li Qingshan's body. Of course, the ring didn't show any signs of opening, but what made him dumbfounded was that the innate qi he had painstakingly cultivated was reduced by more than half in the blink of an eye. It wasn't like the cursive sword calligraphy, which could be recovered after being used up. Instead, he had lost his cultivation. He had once again been forcefully kicked out of the first realm of the innate method of training of qi. However, the remaining true qi had become extremely pure, like a muddy river turning into a clear stream. Even though the quantity had decreased, the quality had greatly increased, and the speed at which it circulated had also increased. Moreover, the more impure one's true qi was, the harder it was to make breakthroughs. It was very easy to get stuck at a bottleneck. Many qi practitioners had to put in a lot of effort to make breakthroughs, like forging iron, slowly refining their true qi. However, this Sumeru ring had directly refined the impure iron into fine steel. He didn't need to spend any time or effort. It was a treasure that countless qi practitioners and even cultivators of higher realms dreamed of. Li Qingshan hadn't expected the Sumeru ring to have such a function other than storage. This could be considered a good thing. However, Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. Was it easy for him to painstakingly cultivate a bit of true qi? Not only did he have to be exploited by the Yao Core, but he also had to go through the refinement of the ring. It was simply killing him. He felt as if he had gone through decades of hard work, only to be liberated overnight. Li Qingshan sighed heavily. He knew this was the correct choice. If he wasted a little more time now, he could save a lot of time in the future. Most people did not waste their time on cultivation. Instead, they were stuck at bottlenecks, unable to advance any further. Just like Protector Yen, who had reached the second level of qi cultivation long ago, but couldn't break through to the third level no matter what. He was stuck at this stage for so many years. Even though he wanted to refine true qi, he was completely powerless. The true qi that was transformed from inner force was simply too impure. Li Qingshan closed his eyes and began to cultivate again. This time, he didn't take off the ring. Yen Song had already chosen his disciples and was ready to set off. However, he waited until late at night and still didn't see Li Qingshan come out. He knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. Lu Hong said, "Could it be that something happened?" However, he thought to himself, "Did Protector Yen purposefully give me a problematic method of practicing qi to drive Li Qingshan into qi deviation?" Yen Song frowned. He had no idea why either. If it were not for the fact that he could hear Li Qingshan's extremely slow and steady breathing in the training room, he would have suspected that Li Qingshan had died from qi deviation. Practicing qi was the same as doing other things. It was about a proper balance between work and rest. It was not just about wasting time. Otherwise, not only would it be pointless, but it would even be harmful. He did not remind Li Qingshan of this, as he could comprehend this during the process of cultivation. As time went on, the effects of practicing qi would worsen, and his mind would become more and more exhausted and anxious. Moreover, true qi was extracted from the body's origin, so it needed to be replenished through food and drink. Otherwise, it would be like water without a source, a tree without roots. Li Qingshan had indeed encountered this problem, but he switched to practicing the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. The spirit turtle sank into the depths of the sea and slumbered for 1,000 years, but it constantly inhaled and exhaled the spiritual qi of the world. To Li Qingshan, meditating was not something that exhausted him. Instead, it was more like sleeping and resting. With a flash of inspiration, he began practicing the innate method of practicing qi again. In the beginning, it was extremely difficult. He would break out of his meditative state with the slightest carelessness, and his cultivation of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression came to a halt. However, gradually, he grasped the trick, turning the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression into an instinct. It was like breathing constantly even when he was asleep. This was not because Li Qingshan was clever, but because the ability was just too profound. It had completely exceeded his imagination. Afterwards, he would practice the innate method of practicing qi in a dreamlike state. The two abilities that belonged to demons and humans circulated through his body at the same time. Li Qingshan discovered that under this state, the demon core was not as greedy for true qi as before. It could give him more of the fruits of his labor. Under this state, his cultivation speed of the innate method of practicing qi reached an unprecedented peak. With how powerful his body was, going without food or drink for a few days was nothing to him. For 3 whole days and nights, Li Qingshan did not sleep or rest. He did not eat or drink. He was completely submerged in cultivation. Finally, he opened his eyes again. He had forcefully returned the innate method of practicing qi to the first layer. He let out a long sigh. He felt incredibly hungry, so he took out the cursive sword calligraphy and poured his incomparably pure true qi into it. Before his true qi ran out, one of the strokes lit up, and a beam of sword qi shot out. Just now, it was like he had tossed wet logs into a furnace. It was very difficult for him to ignite the flames, but what he was using right now was high-grade charcoal. It was easily ignited, providing him with large amounts of heat. The 2 Iron Fist disciples standing guard outside the door suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. They looked at each other and said, "Don't you feel a little cold?" Li Qingshan put away the cursive sword calligraphy and took off his spatial ring, hanging it on his chest again. He then stood up and opened the door. The sunlight was blinding. "Young Hero Li, you're finally out," one of the Iron Fist disciples said while the other hurried to pass on the message. Not long after, Yen Song and Lu Hong rushed over. Lu Hong said, "Qingshan, you're finally out? I thought something happened to you and wanted to break in a few times." Li Qingshan smiled and said, "I'm sorry, the technique that Protector Yen gave me is too profound. I was so engrossed in comprehending it that I lost track of time." "Protector," Yen said, "are you really refining qi? What layer are you at?" Li Qingshan said, "I just reached the first layer." Yen Song said, "That's not slow," but it definitely wasn't fast. The first layer of the innate training of qi was the easiest. He had personally seen a talented child master the first layer in 4 hours. Of course, Li Qingshan couldn't be considered fast, but it was unheard of to use 3 days for the first time to refine qi. Li Qingshan said, "I've made everyone wait for a long time. Can we set off now?" Lu Hong took out a stack of banknotes and handed it to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan was originally here to collect debts. Li Qingshan said, "Sect Leader Lu, You're looking down on me. Protector Yen is so generous. I'm not a stingy person. Don't mention money again. He never wanted to owe anyone anything in his life. Only when he felt that he didn't owe anyone could he be at ease. Although the innate training of Qi was not an impressive collection of abilities, it was extremely important to him. It would be better if he could obtain it as soon as possible. Lu Hong rejoiced inside. He obviously could not make Yen Song hand over the money he had given him. This was his retirement savings. Yen Song admired him as well. He did not take 10,000 taels of silver seriously as he chatted. If he were the young master of a wealthy clan, it would have been nothing, but a young man from the mountains like him was far too rare. This child was born with an extraordinary bearing. It was no wonder that people would appreciate him. Only after a few rounds of refusal did Li Qingshan accept the 2,000 taels of silver as his traveling expenses. When Li Qingshan arrived outside the Iron Fist School, he saw that the Iron Fist School, that had always been quiet, was currently filled with a cacophony of gongs, drums, and firecrackers. There were even groups of dragon and lion dancers, completely surrounding the Iron Fist School. Of course, it was not to send Li Qingshan off, for children with reddened eyes were delivered before Yen Song. They were the children that had been chosen. They had the opportunity to leave this tiny Qingyang city and enter an even vaster world, but at the same time, they would have to leave their homes and distance themselves from their families. Li Qingshan watched on from one side with his arms crossed. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. Turning around, he saw village head Li and caretaker Lu in the crowd as well. Beside them were the two brothers, Li Hu and Li Bao, with a few villagers from the Crouching Ox village behind them. After traveling in the mountains for 3 days, his field of vision suddenly widened. A vast plain unfurled before Li Qingshan's eyes. The golden fields of wheat stretched as far as the eye could see, kicking up waves of wheat in the summer wind. Villages and towns dotted the landscape, with smoke rising from their chimneys. It was very different from the Crouching Ox village. Yen Song said, "We've left the range of Qingyang City now. In another 3 or 5 days, we'll arrive at the ferry crossing, and then we'll be able to change boats and travel directly to Jiaping City or even the Clear River Prefecture." Li Qingshan took out the map Gu Yening had given him. With a thought, a speck of light lit up. The ferry crossing was only a few dozen kilometers away from here. Yen Song said in surprise, "A mental map, and a mental map of the Green Province at that. That's quite valuable. Qingshan, where did you get it from?" Generally speaking, the larger the area covered by a map, the rougher it would be, and the smaller the map, the more detailed it would be. However, a mental map was able to cover 10,000 li while also being extremely detailed. Although it was only a low-grade spiritual tool, it was still very precious, let alone a mental map that encompassed the entire Qing province. Li Qingshan suddenly said, "Protector Yen, Sir Yi, let's part ways here." Over the past few days, he had already gained a rough understanding of the Jianghu and this world from the two of them. At the very least, it was the information they knew, so he would no longer be clueless when he ventured out. Yi Dachuan said, "What? You're not coming with us?" Li Qingshan shook his head. "I plan on traveling alone. I'm really sorry for making you wait for me for 3 days." The reason why he chose to set off with them was probably due to some sort of fear. A person who had not left the village for over a decade suddenly had to go to the outside world, to a so-called big city. He would always feel slightly fearful, even relying on these two people who were not even as powerful as him, just so they could look out for each other along the way. Everyone desired to roam the world. They all desired freedom. However, when a vast world of freedom truly appeared before them, everyone would feel fear and at a loss for what to do. Li Qingshan was no different, but now it was time to cast these emotions aside. When he left the overlapping mountains and looked at the vast plains, the dazzling golden wheat fields, the clear trickling river, and the faint handwriting on the map were reflected in front of his eyes. It was so beautiful and vivid, but his footprints had not even covered 1/10,000th of the map. The few of them looked at each other, not knowing how to persuade him. Suddenly, they heard Li Qingshan spread his arms and said to the vast plains, "I want to travel through the 5 lakes and 4 seas, the 9 provinces of the world." The news of a teenager in his teens carrying a large amount of money spread very quickly, yet he was actually bold enough to enter this world of darkness. If they did not rob him, it would be far too unjustifiable. Li Qingshan said softly, "You're pretty lucky." He knocked the jar. "Time to eat. Hand over the money." One of them drew a shiny dagger, but what he received in response was an even brighter blood flames of corpse incineration. There was basically no sound at all. The flames swallowed the people, and their flesh and blood turned into pure energy, merging with the flames. A lantern lit up the darkness, illuminating a wonton stall guarded by an old man. Although there was no business, only moths lingering around, it still managed to hold on with some difficulty. A young man strode over and called out, "Sir, please give me a bowl of wontons." "All right." The old man began to move quickly, and the wontons floated in the clear water very soon. "It's already so late, so why aren't you resting? At your age, it's time for you to enjoy your old age." Li Qingshan began to chat casually. The old man sighed and grumbled. It was all because his children were unfilial, and he and his wife had nothing to live for. These were the most common miserable things in the world. Li Qingshan sat by the stall and ate the wontons as he comforted the old man with a smile. Sitting alone in a dark corner and eating the simplest food, facing an old man who had gone through many hardships actually felt much better than drinking wine. It was quite strange. "Brother, you're not a local, so I'll give you a piece of advice. You better return to the inn after you finish eating. It's not peaceful here at night." Li Qingshan said, "Could it be that there are bad people here?" Then he heard more complaints and complaints. There was no lack of such things in any place. There were brothels who forced women into prostitution, and scrupulous merchants who gave usurious loans, and gangs who bullied the weak. Li Qingshan listened quietly and memorized everything. He casually inquired about the names and addresses of these people after eating 4 or 5 bowls of wontons. Li Qingshan left all the money he had just obtained from the thieves and got up to leave. "This is too much." The old man was shocked. He raised his head, but there was no trace of Li Qingshan. A gust of night wind blew, and he thought of the stories of demons and ghosts that he had heard before. He decided to pack up his stall now. Tonight, there were demons and ghosts who came to his doorstep to help the weak and get rid of the evil. There was no such thing as evil magic in the world, only evil people. If he killed all the evil people in the world, it would be a great benevolence. Before the sun rose, Li Qingshan had already left the small town. In the wilderness, he practiced the ox demon's fist of great strength. Last night, he killed more than 10 people in a row. His chest was free and clear, and his fists were like beating drums, breaking through the air. Shaoan refined the essence blood of over a dozen people on one side. The blood flames of corpse incineration surged around him, turning into various shapes, such as vicious beasts or venomous snakes. In the end, it actually formed a lotus pedestal, lifting him up. He soared through the wilderness, sometimes ascending and sometimes descending. He was impressive. Wherever he passed by, the lush grass would immediately wither and die, leaving behind a trail of death on the ground. If Little and wanted to kill a second layer chi practitioner like Yensong, It would be as easy as pie. Li Qingshan felt both admiration and admiration. Right now, his strength was only greater than Little Anne's, but he could not fly either. However, Little Anne was nowhere close to the level where he could recondense his flesh and blood. The path of white bone and great beauty was terrifyingly powerful, but it was difficult to practice. It required even more blood sacrifices. Although he did not purposefully collect wealth from the massacre last night, Li Qingshan's wealth still easily reached several tens of thousand taels. If those people were wolves that ate sheep, then he was a tiger that ate wolves. Suddenly, he discovered that to Qi practitioners, the currency of the human world was no longer particularly meaningful, as they possessed strength that surpassed ordinary people. As a result, even through the most basic methods of plundering, they could easily obtain wealth that ordinary people would never be able to obtain in their entire lives. To Qi practitioners, the true treasures were the pills and spiritual stones that could increase their cultivation. However, it was obvious that these resources were in the hands of powerful organizations. Ordinary people would probably never even hear about them in their entire lives. If he wanted to come into contact with these things, joining the Hawkwolf Guard was the best choice. He called Little and set off once again. Regardless of day or night, he traveled whenever he wanted and stopped whenever he wanted. He destroyed 2 or 3 nests of bandits along the way. After 3 days, he finally arrived before a large river and stopped. This river was the Clear River, which was also the origin of the Clear River Prefecture. It stretched for several thousand kilometers, reaching all the way to Clear River City. The surface of the river spanned over 10 kilometers. Even with both of his lives combined, he had never seen a river like this before. As he gazed at the vast ripples, his mind immediately widened. Li Qingshan arrived in a large town by the river. It was called the town of Xiachuan, originally developed from the ferry crossing. Although it was only a town, it was even more bustling than Qingyang City. As he rode on a horse, he saw that the streets were packed with people, bustling with activity. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind. If he killed all of these people, would he be able to refine Little Anne's flesh and blood immediately? Afterwards, he shook his head. Wouldn't that make him a homicidal maniac? There were countless boats on the banks of the river, and people came and went from the docks. It was extremely busy. There were obviously plenty of passenger boats heading south, too. Li Qingshan actually saw a huge dragon boat that stood several stories tall. The boat was richly decorated, like a luxurious restaurant that floated on the water. He immediately dismissed the thought of hiring a small boat and boarded a huge dragon boat. The rooms on the highest floor of the dragon boat had the best scenery, as well as the most expensive. They actually cost several thousand taels of silver. Li Qingshan obviously did not lack silver. He took out a few silver notes, and the caretaker immediately smiled from ear to ear. She ordered a female servant to lead him to the room on the highest floor. Before she left, she even hinted to him in a rather ambiguous manner that he could call her if he needed anything. The room was extremely spacious. Even if it could hold several dozen people, it probably would not be crowded. The decor was even more luxurious than the best Li Qingshan had stayed in along the way. He opened the window and overlooked the port and the town of Xiachuan. He wondered when Yen Song and the others would arrive, but he saw 2 familiar people on the docks. They were the man and woman he had encountered in the restaurant 3 days ago. What? The rooms on the highest floor are already full. You want us to stay below? The man said in displeasure. The caretaker said in a troubled manner, There really is no other way. Young master, the second floor is very luxurious too, so please make do with it. How could people who could spend several thousand taels of silver on a boat lack money? Even if you gave them several tens of thousand taels of silver, They would not be willing to lose face. The woman said, "We have never had the habit of making do in our lives. Caretaker, please think of another way. Money is not a problem." The man frowned and raised his head. He saw Li Qingshan. Chapter 110. Counterattack. At night, thus, the two of them appeared in front of Li Qingshan again. The man didn't waste any time and threw a stack of banknotes in front of Li Qingshan. "Take the money and go downstairs." Li Qingshan slapped the banknote on the man's hand. "You should ask someone else." The woman stopped the man who was about to lose his temper and introduced with a smile, "I'm Qian Rongji, and this is my brother, Qian Rongming." The manager exclaimed and interrupted, "Could the two of you be from ancient Wind City's Qian clan?" Ancient Wind City was a rather large city, and he was a person who traveled all over the world on ships. How could he not have heard of large clans that could cultivate qi practitioners? Qian Rongming snorted arrogantly, while Qian Rongji nodded in a reserved manner. She continued to say to Li Qingshan, "I'd advise you to accept it. When my elder brother loses his temper, he'll kill people." Since she was born in a big family, she had to pay attention to the appearance of a big family. She could not lose her elegance at any time. She preferred to subdue the enemy without fighting. Li Qingshan folded his arms and said, "Is that so? Then I'd like to see it for myself." This was the second time someone had bullied him, so his tolerance was limited. Qian Rongji's expression changed slightly. She came from a great clan, and she was born with the talent to train in qi. She was also very beautiful, and she had the reputation of being the #1 beauty in ancient Wind City. She could be called a proud daughter of heaven. Ever since she was young, as long as she opened her mouth, there was nothing she couldn't do. Especially those stinky men, they were even more willing to work like cows and horses for her. There was never a time when they were rejected. Compared to the self-restraint on the surface, the arrogance in her bones was much stronger than that of her brother, Qian Rongming. She said coldly, "It looks like you are refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. I've always been fond of drinking. I'm willing to give it a try, even if it's a toast or a forfeit." Li Qingshan looked at her face seriously, watching how a young lady's expression changed, as if he was watching some kind of magical performance. Qian Rongji took a deep breath and took a step back. She said calmly, "You're just a Jianghu person who has practiced some hard body skills. How dare you act so arrogantly in front of a qi practitioner? Such an idiot was unnecessary in this world, so there was no harm in killing him." Qian Rongming laughed sinisterly as he walked forward. The manager sighed and was prepared to have someone collect the corpse. It was not wise to clash with the Qian clan directly. What ancient Wind City's Qian clan? Is it that amazing? At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Everyone turned around and saw a man in his 30s walking out of the room. He wasn't tall and had a pair of slanted eyes on his tanned face. He looked at them with contempt. "What are you?" Qian Rongming furiously stepped forward, but he was pulled back by Qian Rongji. She looked over warily. "May I ask who you are? What does that mean?" Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Another qi practitioner, and an expert at the 3rd level at that. No wonder he dared to look down on this pair of brother and sister who were only at the 2nd level. The dark-skinned man sneered, "With just the two of you, you're nowhere close to becoming Hawkwolf guards. Why waste time going to Jiaping City? Hurry up and disembark and go home." Only then did Li Qingshan understand that this person was not standing up for him. He had come for the limited spots in the Hawkwolf Guard. He saw through the intentions of the siblings, which was why he had spoken up beforehand to deal a blow to his opponent. Qian Rongming and Qian Rongji glanced at one another. Although there was a slight difference in strength, they still stood a chance if they worked together. However, they would have to use up their precious talismans, and they would lose the opportunity to join the Hawkwolf Guard. Just you wait. After a moment of hesitation, they left behind a vicious threat before leaving in a hurry. However, they did not just say that to the skinny man. They even glared viciously at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for helping me out. May I ask for your name? Brother?" "Kid, don't think you can mess around just because you have some money. There are far too many people in this world that you can't afford to offend. I'd advise you to disembark immediately," the man said coldly before slamming the door shut. Li Qingshan shrugged. This was the treatment of the weak. The ship moved slowly, breaking through the waves on the gentle surface of the river and flowing downstream, heading towards Jiaping City. There were only a few rooms on the very top floor of the ship. The doors were all tightly shut. Only Li Qingshan paced around on the deck, admiring the open scenery on the two banks. It was too much for his eyes to take in, so he immediately cast aside the matter of just now. The ship sailed into the night. Li Qingshan was currently meditating and practicing in his room. He currently possessed 4 cultivation methods: the Ox Demon's Fist of Great Strength, the Tiger Demon's Fist of Bone Forging, the Spirit Turtle's Method of Sea Suppression, and the innate method of practicing Qi. They all had 9 layers, and he was currently at the first layer. The former was a demon's ability, so the further he progressed, the more difficult it became to practice. The time it took to practice increased exponentially too. On the other hand, the innate method of practicing Qi progressed much faster because it was a human cultivation method of the lowest grade. In order to obtain the items in the Sumru Ring, Li Qingshan had devoted a lot of effort into it. With his powerful body, the rate at which he refined vitality into Qi was startling as well. After a few days, he was already close to the second layer. Little and did not continue practicing. Instead, he crouched in a corner of the room, reading a book. There were 2 bookshelves in the room. They contained many leisure books like poems and songs, as well as a few common Buddhist scriptures. Little and was reading a Buddhist scripture. Although the eminent monk who had attained enlightenment had entered the demonic path, and the path of white bone and great beauty was also an ability of the demonic path, it had essentially evolved from the Buddhist Dharma, so he obviously had to pay attention and comprehend it. The blood-red flames in his eye sockets illuminated the words in the book. It was a rather strange sight. Suddenly, he raised his head. Li Qingshan opened his eyes as well and gazed at the door. They could both sense it. He seemed to see a virtual little box with all kinds of things inside. There was naturally no lack of silver notes, but there were also a few small bottles and a few talismans. With a thought, the things inside appeared in his hand. Li Qingshan was overjoyed. So this was the legendary 100 Treasures pouch. In the past few days, he had asked Yen Song about a lot of Qi practitioners' general knowledge. He knew that the Sumru Ring was something that only truly powerful cultivators could possess. The space inside was extremely vast. As for how vast it was, he had only heard of it, but had never seen it. It was rare for a normal Qi practitioner to have 100 Treasures pouch. The reason why he found this brocade pouch familiar was because he had seen it on Wang Pushi of the Red Eagle territory. However, Wang Pushi's 100 Treasures pouch was much more beautiful than this one. Presumably, the storage space was also much larger. Without thinking too much, he knew that the one on Qian Rongming's body was a standard substandard item. It could not even store a longer weapon. However, even a substandard 100 Treasures pouch was extremely rare. At the very least, Yen Song, a cultivator at the second level of Qi practitioner, did not have one, as expected of someone who came from a so-called family clan. He really had some talent. Li Qingshan checked the things in the 100 treasures pouch. Among the bottles, there was a bottle of healing medicine and 3 bottles of qi concentration pills. They were not the inferior pills that ordinary people of the Jianghu refined, but real spiritual pills. Of course, compared to the spiritual pills that Xianyue had fed him, they were worlds apart. However, they were real pills for qi practitioners, and they were exactly what Li Qingshan needed the most right now. Chapter 111. Great River City. The 3 yellow spirit talismans of unknown effects were most likely the trump cards that Qian Rongming had mentioned. Li Qingshan had also learned from Yen Song that spirit talismans were also divided into grades. Although these 3 were also yellow spirit talismans, they were much brighter than the spirit talismans that Li Qingshan had on him. They were at least low grade, or mid grade. His eyesight was still not good enough. Holy Church, the spirit talismans and spirit artifacts that ordinary people of the Jianghu could obtain with money were mostly inferior goods. They were made by novices who had just learned how to forge artifacts or create talismans. Even if ordinary people obtained true grade spirit talismans and spirit artifacts, they would find it difficult to use them. At the very least, if they bit the tip of their tongue and spit out blood, it would be very difficult to activate a low-grade spirit talisman. Finally, he no longer had to carry those miscellaneous items on him, other than the Sumeru ring, which he could not put into it. Li Qingshan placed all of his possessions into the 100 treasures pouch. He checked his own belongings, including the silver that Qian Rongming had brought. He had a total of 70 to 80,000 silver notes, several spirit talismans, 3 bottles of qi gathering pills, and other small items like healing pills. However, other than the Sumeru ring, the most precious thing on him was not these, but a demon core. He had taken it from the Rat General in Boundless Mountain. Of course, Xianyue did not think much of it, and had left it for Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan did not know how to use it, and did not dare to eat anything. So he kept it in a small bottle. He took it out to admire it, and then placed it into the 100 treasures pouch. Finally, he put the 100 treasures pouch back into his robes. The feeling of having a great increase in his wealth was really quite good. Li Qingshan's murderous nature was aroused, and he wondered if he should go all out and find that Qian Rongji and cut the weeds by the roots. It had to be said that killing and robbing was addictive. Why did humans incessantly wage war? It was because stealing from others was always much faster than creating for oneself. However, he immediately suppressed this thought. It was not that he was soft-hearted, but that he was worried that if he did this, his murderous nature would be aroused, and he would kill the black-faced man next door as well, taking his things. He definitely had the strength to do so. He didn't even need to release his demonic power, as long as he joined hands with Little, and he could do it. On the one hand, the other person had something you wanted, and on the other hand, you had the strength to take it without paying any price. How many people could suppress their greed and desire? Even with the suppression of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, his primitive instincts that were no different from those of demons urged him to do this. However, acting on instinct was not the path he wanted. While he was constantly obtaining great power, he was also constantly learning how to control this power so that he wouldn't lose himself. At the same time, he also realized something else. When a person had great power, they would become very terrifying. Qian Rongming probably thought this way. He killed Li Qingshan without paying any price. He could easily breathe a sigh of relief. It was as natural as eating and drinking. The dangers of the cultivation path of the human world were probably even greater than the boundless mountains. Li Qingshan dismissed these stray thoughts. If Qian Rongji did not come to provoke him, then so be it, but if she did, then he would kill her as well. There was no need for him to go through the trouble of looking for her right now. As soon as Li Qingshan returned to his room, he sensed something. He opened the window and gazed into the distance. All he saw was a figure leaping off the ship when it was relatively close to the shore. She landed on a sandbank and quickly vanished into the jungle. From the figure, he could tell it was Qian Rongji. Li Qingshan could not help but sigh. This woman really was quite decisive and cunning. She must have realized something was amiss when Qian Rongming did not return. She did not investigate or question him, directly leaping off the ship and fleeing. Shaking his head and casting this matter aside, Li Qingshan took out a bottle of qi gathering pills. He opened it and took a look. There were only 3 in there, and each one was the size of a longan. He took one out and ingested it, beginning to cultivate. As expected, with the assistance of the external pill, his cultivation speed increased slightly. The medicinal effects replenished his true qi, and true qi circulated through his body. As he inhaled and exhaled, time flew. Very soon, a qi gathering pill was refined in his body. Li Qingshan took out another qi gathering pill and ingested it. If other practitioners had seen this, they would have been dumbfounded. Who would eat elixirs like jelly beans? Although external elixirs could greatly increase the speed of cultivation, it did not mean that a person could easily become an expert with elixirs and miraculous elixirs. Talent, hard work, a teacher, and even luck were all indispensable. Furthermore, there was a limit to how many medicinal pills one could take. It was not as simple as eating as much as one could and then converting it all into power. Otherwise, alchemists would all be unparalleled experts. For example, Qian Rongming's 9 qi gathering pills were originally used for 3 months. One pill was taken every 10 days to slowly refine the medicinal effects. This was when the family valued it more. The normal speed was to take 1 pill every half a month to ensure that the medicinal effects were not wasted. Who would eat it like Li Qingshan? This was because the medicinal power of a mere qi condensation pill could not possibly remain in his body for more than 10 days. He had to seize every second to convert it into true qi, lest it be plundered by the demonic core and converted into demonic qi. Not a single bit of it would go to waste. Of course, Li Qingshan did not know this. He was still happily thinking that it was indeed faster to take medicinal pills and cultivate. When he ate the 7th qi gathering pill, he had successfully cultivated the innate training of qi to the 2nd tier. Because of the Sumeru ring's purifying true qi, he did not feel any bottlenecks at all. He stood up. He could feel the extremely pure true qi coursing through his body. His entire body seemed to be much lighter. He put away the remaining 2 qi gathering pills. With his keen hearing, he heard a commotion coming from afar. The ship was also bustling with noise. He could faintly hear many people saying, "We've arrived at Jiaping City." Li Qingshan went outside in a hurry to take a look. He saw that the deck below was already filled with people, while the river was blocked by a large mountain, and made a turn. After making it around the bend, a majestic city sat between the mountains and rivers, unfolding before Li Qingshan's eyes. More accurately speaking, it could not be called a city, as there were no city walls here. It was closer to a modern city. This was the place where 2 large rivers met. The Yi River flowed into the Qing River here, and the city of Jiaping was spread out on both sides of the river. Rows upon rows of residences, buildings, pagodas, temples, and Taoist monasteries stretched out endlessly in all directions. Further out were boundless golden fields, and large flocks of birds flew freely under the blue sky above the city. After experiencing the dangers of the boundless mountains, he had used the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to conceal all of his aura. It had basically become an instinctive action. Even after refining true qi, it was still the same. Obviously, he had to firmly suppress his demon qi. He could not allow even a sliver of it to leak out, but there was no need for him to be so cautious with true qi. If he revealed his identity as a qi practitioner at a suitable time, it should save him quite a lot of trouble. As a result, his aura changed. His true qi was no longer suppressed, so it was naturally released, displaying the strength of a first-layer qi practitioner. However, it only led to a roar of laughter. Even the doubtful gazes finally looked away, no longer taking Li Qingshan seriously. The unknown was terrifying, which was why a donkey could scare away a tiger. However, when a donkey used up all 3 of its moves, that was when it would be at its wit's end. The envoy put down his brush and smiled as well. I can tell you're young, so it's not easy for you to possess such talent. Why don't you go home and cultivate for a few more years? You can only go out after you break through to the 2nd layer. The competition this time will be dangerous. Li Qingshan ignored the mockery. He expressed his gratitude towards the kind reminder before saying confidently, "I'm confident." The envoy did not comment on that. He continued to record. No clan, no sect, no master. This was Li Qingshan's background. Before long, the envoy finished recording and raised his head. The competition will begin in 3 days. You can leave. Someone will arrange a place for you to stay. You can stay here if you want. Another attendant picked up a wooden sign and hung it at the end of the high wall, hanging it together with the names of the others. Of course, there wasn't any complicated information on it. There was only the name on the front and the cultivation level on the back. This made Li Qingshan sigh. To a qi practitioner, background and master were all fake. Strength was the only calling card, something that people valued. When he turned around, he looked at the crowd of qi practitioners as if he was looking at trash. He shook his head and especially said to those who were laughing at him loudly, "Trash." Arrogance was his nature, and ridiculing others was his talent. "Who are you talking about?" a qi practitioner said angrily. He was the one who told Li Qingshan to go home and drink milk. "I'll talk to whoever answers." Li Qingshan said. Those who did not speak ill of Li Qingshan naturally did not think that Li Qingshan was scolding them. The qi practitioner flashed in front of Li Qingshan and suddenly raised his hand, gathering his true qi. The envoy who was recording said, "Private fights on the mountain. Kill without mercy." The qi practitioner's hand trembled a little, but he still lowered it in the end. The rules of the Hawkwolf Guard were no joke. In the very beginning, when the Hawkwolf Guard recruited new people, they did not care about food or lodging. All they had to do was come on the day of the competition. Afterwards, many people were unable to come. The qi practitioners lived in Jiaping City. In order to eliminate their opponents, they would basically stop at nothing. Poisoning, ambushing, and assassinating would often end before they even began. As a result, the rules were changed. All the people who came to be recruited would stay on the mountain, and they were forbidden from attacking one another in any way. If they did, they would be killed without mercy. Li Qingshan said, "Come bite me, you idiot." How did the saying go? Your brother's low profile doesn't give you the right to show off. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That was his principle in life. You can curse, but I'm not stupid either. The qi practitioner laughed out of anger. In 3 days, you'll understand what it means to be reckless. Li Qingshan stood up and said loudly, "Everyone, please calm down. I'm selling all of these talismans, but they'll go to the highest bidder. We'll exchange pills for talismans, and we'll be fair to everyone. Let's start with this Swift Breeze talisman." He ranked the talismans in his hand according to their spiritual qi, going from weak to strong. He actually began an auction on the spot. The envoys in green all looked over, but none of them interfered. However, they really had never seen anyone selling talismans here before. "I'll pay a qi condensing pill." Someone answered immediately. "Two." Li Qingshan said, "Is there anyone else who's willing to pay a higher price?" After asking for a while, someone finally made a bid of 3 pills. After that, no one else placed a bid. It seemed that low-grade talismans weren't too important to qi practitioners. Zhang Xian accepted the 3 qi gathering pills and handed the talisman back to the qi practitioner. Actually, the price of the talisman had already completely exceeded its normal price. Normally, it would be very rare for it to be worth a qi condensing pill, as everyone understood that compared to these external items, pills that could increase one's strength were the way to go. But at a time like this, the situation was reversed. No matter how many qi condensing pills they had, they could not increase their strength immediately. However, an additional talisman, even if it was inferior, could immediately increase their strength by a little. It would give them a better chance in the upcoming competition. If they did not buy it themselves, it was very likely for their opponent to obtain it, which would become a tool to defeat or even kill them. Even the lowest grade of inferior talismans could be the straw that broke the camel's back. On one hand, it was the beautiful future that awaited them after joining the Hawkwolf Guard, but on the other hand, it was the tragic sight of defeat and death. They were forced to do everything they could. When Li Qingshan reached the low-grade talismans, the atmosphere gradually heated up. The number of qi condensing pills began to exceed 5. When Li Qingshan sold all of the talismans and only had mid-grade lightning strike talismans left, he already possessed over 50 qi condensing pills. He discovered that the qi condensing pills were not uniform in size. Many of them were only the size of peanuts. A single bottle could hold over a dozen of them. As it turned out, the pills refined were not perfectly round pills, but paste-like substances. Alchemists would then refine them according to the standard. Alchemists with insufficient skill would refine pills with weaker effects. In order to ensure the same effects, the standard for qi condensing pills had to be slightly larger. There were many qi practitioners who had never bid until Li Qingshan took out the final mid-grade talisman. Only then did their eyes suddenly light up. 10 qi condensing pills. 20. 25. The price immediately surpassed its previous price. This talisman was a talisman that could truly influence the outcome of a battle. It was also why Qian Rongming was bold enough to challenge third-layer qi practitioners. Whoever obtained this talisman would have an additional 30% chance of victory, at the very least. Many qi practitioners were determined to obtain this talisman. Li Qingshan smiled from ear to ear. With these qi condensing pills, breaking through to the third layer of the innate method of practicing qi would become extremely easy. Suddenly, he turned around and saw Qian Rongji standing at the entrance, staring at him resentfully. She obviously knew what talismans Qian Rongming possessed. Li Qingshan sneered slightly. She had failed to bully him, so she came to kill him. Qian Rongming's death was nothing to be regretted. If this woman did not know her place, he would just send her to see Qian Rongming and keep him company in the afterlife. That was because Li Qingshan could clearly hear them discussing the strength of the qi practitioners and how much they had bet. They were so relaxed that it seemed like they were discussing a horse race or a dog fight. A black wolf guard with a rosaceous nose held a list in his hand. The names and cultivations of the various qi practitioners were written on it. There's no lack of third-layer qi practitioners among the top 3. The only thing worth betting on is who among the second-layer qi practitioners can emerge victorious. The black wolf guard beside him leaned against a pillar and said indifferently, "I'm betting on that woman." Bulbous Nose looked at the list. Qian Rongji? Why? He's not particularly powerful. It's a feeling, the Black Wolf Guard said with a smile. He was very secretive, but he looked into the building. Bulbous Nose seemed to suddenly understand something, and he also smiled in tacit understanding. The Hawk Wolf Guard suddenly said, "Oi, look at that kid. He's looking at us, the first layer Qi practitioner. Why don't we bet on when he'll die? Then I'll bet on the first round." Two men sat opposite each other in the building. They could clearly see through the curtains and the surroundings. There was a pot of tea on the table, giving off a pleasant fragrance. Two beautiful female attendants stood beside them. One of the men was slightly plump and wore a black hawk uniform. He was the Black Hawk commander of Jiaping City, Zhuo. His eyes narrowed into slits as he smiled. "Sir Zhou, let's have a little bet as well. What do you think?" Although he still seemed middle-aged, his actual age was in his 60s at the very least. However, because he had opened the 4 major meridians of yin and yang as a qi practitioner, broken through the girdle meridian, and condensed a sea of qi, he seemed much younger. Sir Zhou, on the other hand, seemed even younger. He did not seem to be in his 30s yet. He was dressed like a scholar, with a few strands of beard that added to his solemnity. He seemed like a refined scholar. He waved his hand with a smile. I'm not betting. I'm just asking for trouble if I'm betting in your territory." However, he did not laugh at all inside. This bastard had come to show off his strength to me again. How despicable. In Jiaping City, the only person who could stand on equal footing with Zhuo was obviously the district magistrate of Jiaping, Zhou Wenbin. There had never been a place where two people of equal authority could get intimate with each other. However, the two of them were both fearful of one another, so they maintained peace on the surface and did not invade one another. They would show off their strength to the other whenever they had the opportunity. Under Zhuo's repeated requests, Zhou Wenbin finally picked up the register. Afterwards, he saw a name, and his heart skipped a beat. "Commander Zhuo, there's a first layer qi practitioner among the applicants this time. There are people who don't know what's good for them every year." Zhuo had noticed this anomaly a long time ago, but he did not take it to heart. The difference was just too great. Although Wang Puxi had reprimanded him because of Feng Zhang telling him to report to him, he had never mentioned Li Qingshan's name at all. Perhaps even Wang Puxi believed it was impossible for Li Qingshan to escape from Feng Zhang with his puny skills, and that was something that happened a few months ago. Zhou Wenbin hid his smile. He did not have Zhuo's influence in Jiaping, but as someone who came from Clear River City and had attended the 100 schools of thought, he was much more well-connected and well-informed. His memory was quite impressive, too. He could vaguely remember that a friend of his in Clear River City had once mentioned an interesting matter to him in a letter. It mentioned a name, and it seemed to be surnamed Li. The White Hawk commander, Gu Yenying, was the woman with the most authority and power in the Rui commandery. She was the dream lover of all men. As long as they saw her, there was not a single person who could remain unmoved. Although they could only drool over her and could not approach her, everything related to her was a topic that people took great interest in. She was like a superstar from Li Qingshan's past life. And his old friend, Zhuo, had even been reprimanded by Old Wang of the Clear River Prefecture because of this. As a result, this interesting matter was even more worth reminiscing about. I'll bet 10 spiritual stones. I'll bet that this kid definitely has something to rely on since he's bold enough to enlist as a first layer qi practitioner. He'll be able to rise up suddenly and become a Hawkwolf guard. Zhuo's eyes narrowed. He smiled. "And I thought you weren't good at gambling. Aren't you even more addicted to gambling than me? A group of people at the top would gamble with the lives of those below them, while a group of people at the bottom would become the tools of gambling for those above them. Humans were no different when it came to gambling with Qi practitioners. Attacking and competing with each other was the instinct of these primitive creatures. It was only expressed in a slightly different way. Li Qingshan stood to the side. The group of Qi practitioners were filled with hostility towards him. Those who managed to buy talismans would not thank him because their chances of success had increased. They would only resent him for using the opportunity to extort them. Those who did not manage to buy talismans would resent him because their opponents had grown stronger. Not to mention the people who mocked him, only to be mocked by him. In the Clear River Prefecture, no one was bold enough to say that Wang Puxi did not keep his word. At the very least, Shuo Zhibua was not. His expression changed a few times before returning to normal. He even smiled slightly. He tossed the black wolf uniform down the stairs. Li Qingshan, you're a Hawkwolf guard now. Just wait down there. Thank you for your promotion, Commander Zhua. Li Qingshan clasped his hands, but he instead became even more vigilant. People who could control their emotions were like venomous snakes hiding in the grass. They were even more terrifying than angry lions and tigers. The Holy Church with that. The spectating Hawkwolf guards could not help but be taken aback. The Qi practitioners who had come to take part in the recruitment were thrown into an uproar. Just like that, they had lost another spot. The clown who was supposed to be dead in their eyes had actually directly passed through in such a manner. The Qi practitioners immediately felt it was unfair. That's unfair. Why can't he take part in the competition? The Qi practitioner who had clashed directly with Li Qingshan and wanted to kill Li Qingshan cried out. He's only a first-layer Qi practitioner. Even someone like that can join the Hawkwolf Guard. Jiao Fei and Qian Rongji stared at Li Qingshan from afar. They were no less surprised and shocked than the people around them. They said nothing. How could a group of measly Qi practitioners change the Black Hawk commander's decision? They wondered just how powerful of a backer they had to be to directly force Shuo Zhibua to accept him. Wang Puxi? Who was that? Wang Puxi's nickname of Old Wang had spread far too far, such that some people had forgotten about his actual name. However, the two of them were both well-informed and quick-witted people, so they immediately realized who it was. Was it the legendary Old Wang of the Scarlet Hawk Commander? No way. That was a figure who overlooked all the Qi practitioners of the Clear River Prefecture, one of the 3 rulers of a territory spanning 1,500 kilometers. However, apart from that person, who else could force Shuo Zhibua to yield without even showing up? They looked at Li Qingshan again, and only felt that this seemingly ordinary 16-year-old young man was even more unfathomable. If the person standing behind him really was that person, then he was someone they could not afford to provoke. Jiao Fei thought about how he managed to establish a connection with someone like that. If that was the case, then killing Qian Rongming without batting an eyelid seemed to be a matter of course. Zhou Wenbin looked at the noisy scene with a smile and said to Shuo Zhibua, I was just joking with you earlier. I've said before that the thing I hate the most in my life is gambling, so there's no need for Commander Zhuo to mind. But I've never gone back on my word. Are you looking down on my gambling character, Sir Zhou? However, Wang Puxi did not explain his relationship with Li Qingshan at all. He only mentioned it casually, and he seemed very cold. He could not help but look at Zhou Wenbin. This bastard had many connections in the prefectural city, so he definitely knew something. Zhou Wenbin cleared his throat. Commander Zhua, I heard that the White Hawk of the Rui Commandery has seen this kid before. He even invited him to a cup of alcohol, and gave him the mental map of the Green Province that Sheriff Wong carries with him. Really? Zhibo shivered inside. A name rang out in his head, as well as the white figure that he had only caught a glimpse of, but he was determined to never forget. He was rather well informed. He knew that Commander Gu had once appeared in the small city on the border. He understood even better that Feng Zhang had run into trouble, making old Wang lose face before Commander Gu, which was why he was directly dismissed. The talisman shattered and suddenly turned into a swath of white light. It was so dazzling that no one could open their eyes. The spectating Qi practitioners all looked over. However, Li Qingshan could clearly see that the talisman was only an inferior grade talisman. Apart from being dazzling, it did not possess any offensive power at all. However, the green-robed Qi practitioner became flustered. Due to fear, his body stiffened up slightly. In a battle between experts, there was only a single line. There was a flash of light, and with it was the flash of a sword. The green-robed Qi practitioner let out meaningless gurgles. A metal sword that shone with light had pierced his throat. His eyes were filled with regret. He still had a few talismans he had not used. If he had used them right from the start, he would definitely have won. 2 streaks of tears flowed from the corner of his eyes, drowned by regret and death. The green-robed Qi practitioner announced loudly, "Lu Yiming is victorious." He did not even mention the green-robed Qi practitioner's name. Either he amazed everyone with a single move, or he died a nameless death. Abundant battle experience and decisiveness became the key to victory. Li Qingshan also gained a deeper understanding that whether it be talismans or techniques, it all depended on the person to use them. Even if a sheep had the claws and teeth of a wolf, it would still be a sheep. Unfortunately, Lu Yiming failed to amaze everyone with a single move. He encountered a 3rd-layer Qi practitioner in his second battle. Fortunately, he saw the opportunity in time and forfeited early, which was why he did not lose his life for nothing. Under the gloomy sky, the rain drizzled down slowly. The matches continued one after another. Not every single match would result in death. If they were not the opponent's opponent, they could forfeit. The other side could not force them into a corner. This was part of the Hawkwolf Guard's efforts to reduce the number of casualties. However, whether it be spiritual artifacts or techniques used by Qi practitioners, they were just too powerful. Basically, every single one of them was strong on the offensive, but weak on the defensive. Most of the time, it was impossible for them to forfeit. Once they were struck, only death awaited them. Victory and defeat were separated by a thin line. The second round of matches ended. There were already 4 corpses on the side. The noble Qi practitioners just lay in the muddy water lifelessly. Li Qingshan suddenly felt very foolish. They had already obtained everything that ordinary people could never obtain in their entire lives, yet they risked their lives to fight for even more, only to lose their lives as a result. However, he suddenly thought about it. Wasn't he the same as well? Surely he could not say that he had great dreams and others had foolish ambitions. He could not help but shake his head in a self-deprecating manner. However, he had no plans to change his mind at all. The so-called contentment was just a way for the weak to console themselves. It was the creed of life for those who had lost their drive to live and the spirit to forge ahead. A man's ambitions were everywhere. His ambitions had yet to be fulfilled. So what was there to talk about contentment? Only constant struggle and forging ahead was the source of happiness. Even if he died in defeat, he would not have lived in vain. The pretentious thoughts in his head vanished. When he looked at the battlefield again, there was no longer any mockery or self-deprecation in his eyes. Instead, there was admiration. He admired the Qi practitioners mobilizing all of their wits and strength to fight it out with their opponents. seeking victory in the face of danger and seeking survival in the shadow of death. The exuberance of life they gave off made death seem insignificant. Battle intent and fighting spirit flowed through his body. Zhuo had been paying attention to Li Qingshan the entire time. He could clearly sense Li Qingshan's great fighting spirit. He saw how he was almost admiring the matches. This was very unusual. Due to his anger, the Black Wolf guards upstairs were afraid to make a ruckus and jeer like before. However, they still looked down on him like they were watching a battle between beasts, even though they had also emerged from the arena. Only Li Qingshan was admiring the battle and thirsting for slaughter. Zhou Wenbin was also observing Li Qingshan. This teenager, no man, possessed a bearing that was completely different from ordinary people. Although he usually kept it hidden and seemed ordinary, it would erupt and reveal itself as soon as an opportunity presented itself. However, no matter how special he was, it would all be useless if his cultivation and strength were insufficient. A first layer Qi practitioner in his teens was quite talented in Jiaping City, but in the context of the entire Clear River Prefecture, it was very mediocre. He would probably remain as a Black Wolf guard for the rest of his life. He would be lucky if he could even split open a sea of Qi. Zhou Wenbin glanced at Zhuo and shook his head. And, under this person's command, it would probably be very difficult for even this wish to come true. He was the one who had provoked him right from the beginning, only to be called trash by him instead. He said, "Since you want to die so much, I'll give you what you want." In the ears of others, it was arrogant. What do you want? You're just a first layer Qi practitioner. Lu Hui looked at Li Qingshan, who walked over slowly. For some reason, he actually felt deep fear. His mind cleared up a lot, and he regretted what he had said just now. When he was still 20 steps away, Li Qingshan stopped. He leaned forward and bent his knees, like a vicious tiger lurking in the forest, ready to pounce on its prey. After a momentary suppression, his strength erupted violently, and he leapt into the air. Li Qingshan's gaze was calm and composed, like a young beast king that had leapt out of the forest gracefully. There was no violence or fury, only calmness and composure from confidence. It was chilling. Lu Hui looked at the pair of emotionless eyes and felt an almost suffocating pressure. When Li Qingshan stopped, he had circulated all the true qi in his body. However, when Li Qingshan moved from extreme stillness to extreme movement, all he saw was a blur gliding past him. The speed of the blur was so fast that it created an illusion. It was as if a gust of wind blew in his face after a long time, bringing with it a cold drizzle that hit his face. The figure in front of him disappeared, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He lowered his head, and where his chest should have been was empty. Turning his head with difficulty, he saw that Li Qingshan was holding a bloody heart in his hand. He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, he fell face up to the ground. The entire square fell silent for a moment, and the sound of the rain suddenly became clear. Everyone revealed expressions of shock. Even Zhuo and Zhou Wenbin revealed expressions of shock as they exclaimed in unison, "A body refiner!" A second layer Qi practitioner had been killed in a single strike, and it was not a sneak attack or a talisman. It was a direct confrontation. Everyone felt a deep chill. The Qi practitioners looked at Li Qingshan like they were looking at a monster. Was he really just a first layer Qi practitioner? The Qi practitioners no longer grumbled about Li Qingshan not participating. Instead, they felt extremely fortunate. If he were to participate, there would probably be a few more corpses lying on the side of the square. Perhaps they would be among them. Sure enough, no one was an idiot. Those who were bold enough to sell talismans before the battle had absolute confidence in their own strength. It was a pity that they were still mocking him. Fortunately, they were not like that idiot who actually leapt out to oppose him. Even the Black Wolf guards, who had always been dismissive of the upcoming battles, stared at Li Qingshan in shock. Originally, they felt great disdain towards this kid who had openly entered through the back door and relied on his connections, but now their opinion of him had completely changed. This kid was definitely not someone they could teach a lesson to casually. The shock that Li Qingshan had given everyone surpassed the shock that Zhui Zhibua had received from killing the Qi practitioner just now. One of them had used his strength against a weaker opponent, so it made perfect sense for him to kill his opponent instantly, while the other had used his strength against a stronger opponent and defeated him easily. This was just far too unusual. Li Qingshan abandoned his heart and calmed his breathing. Just now, he had instantly erupted with his physical strength and true qi. Even he was rather surprised by the results. However, when he lunged out, he possessed absolute confidence. The tiger demon leaps over the ravine, and the tiger demon digs out the heart. After he had become a demon, these moves seemed to have fused with his blood, becoming a part of his instincts. Back then, when he did not even have a shred of true qi, he was able to defeat Feng Zhang in a single stroke with his physical strength and an opening. During that time, he cultivated every single day. With the nourishment of several dozen qi gathering pills, the demon qi he converted into made his body even more powerful. Furthermore, his spiritual qi had almost reached the peak of the first layer of qi practitioner, and it was extremely pure. His strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. However, Lu Hui was the exact opposite. He had just gone through 3 battles, so his true qi and physical strength were at their weakest. The outcome was extremely clear between one being stronger and the other being weaker. Li Qingshan gained a new evaluation of his strength. In his human form, killing a 3rd-layer qi practitioner in a direct confrontation should not be a problem. However, he had never seen a 4th-layer qi practitioner before, so it was rather difficult to say. Of course, this was all under the premise that his opponent did not possess any particularly powerful trump cards. However, when it came to trump cards, just how many people could surpass him? Li Qingshan returned to Qian, Rongji, and Jiao Fei's side. They could not help but take a slight step back. The terrifying power that Li Qingshan had erupted with pressured them greatly. The reason why Xiaogu was so friendly was definitely related to the strength he had demonstrated just now. Although he was cautious, it was always a good thing to be treated as an equal. Gu Jian said, "There aren't a lot of people who practice this nowadays. There are a few methods of practicing the body in the collection, and they've almost gone moldy. However, I never thought they would actually be so powerful. Even I'm interested in practicing them. You have to teach me properly when the time comes." He was just joking around. Although body practitioners seemed like they were equal to qi practitioners, that was just people who practiced the body trying to flatter themselves. It was not some hidden, powerful occupation. It was just like the Taoist ability of the 9 oxen and 2 tigers. Most ancient cultivation methods were lost because they were unsuitable for the times. Compared to the great power they displayed in battle, there were many more drawbacks to methods of practicing the body. Every single path was a summary of the countless experiences and lessons of predecessors. However, Li Qingshan was not human, so there was no need for him to follow the path of these former humans. Arriving in the depths of the mountain, they entered a stone building carved into the side of the mountain. Gu Jian led the 3 of them through a series of stone doors. Every single stone door was engraved with inscriptions. Even spiritual artifacts could not break through it. This was the treasury of the Hawkwolf Guard. To the Hawkwolf Guard, no amount of treasure was worth protecting like this. unless they were items that possessed spirits. Gu Jian chose 2 sets of black wolf uniforms for each of them in the treasury first. Li Qingshan touched the glossy material gently. After Gu Jian's introduction, he learned that it was made from black silk. It was fireproof and waterproof, and even crossbows could not pierce through it. This was the best set of clothes he had ever worn in both of his lives. However, he did not mind too much. With his ox demon forges, its hide, he had never been afraid of crossbows. If this was the benefit of joining the Hawkwolf Guard, then it would be a little disappointing. However, Jiao Fei and Qian Rongji did not show any disappointment at all. They held the black wolf uniform like it was a treasure as their minds wandered. Qian Rongji's heart was filled with both resentment and joy. If she returned to ancient Wind City in this set of clothes, then those old coots would learn to respect her a little. All the people who had offended her and looked down on her would have to pay the price. Her hatred towards her family was actually 10 times, no, 100 times greater than the person who had killed her family, Li Qingshan. The items Gu Jian took out next completely attracted their attention. Even Li Qingshan became eager. They were 3 exquisite 100 treasures pouches. They were nothing like the piece of trash in his hand. Gu Jian said, "Everyone can choose one as their personal weapon. If you're not confident in your insight, I'd recommend you choose the standard wind entwining blade. Hurry up. We still need to look at the houses later." The 3 of them immediately began to choose eagerly. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to choose a heavy weapon. The heavier the better. Originally, he had already taken a fancy to a huge, long-handled axe. However, with a thought, he directly went to the weapons rack to the west and chose a wind entwining blade. He drew the blade from its sheath. The patterns on it were densely packed, and it shone with a cold light. It was obvious that it had never been used before. It was brand new and shiny. The mouth was engraved with inscriptions. As long as he channeled true qi into it, he could unleash wind blades. It could be regarded as a well-made, low-grade spiritual artifact. Gu Jian gave him a thumbs up, praising his choice. Li Qingshan smiled back. He was extremely satisfied with the wind entwining blade as well, but it was not because he was not confident in his insight. There was a certain level of care in choosing what weapon to use. Right now, it was no longer the time for him to trample over the Black Wind stronghold. Weapons that were too large could not be stored in his 100 treasures pouch, which made it difficult to carry around. It was very inconvenient. He had made his name with the blade in the first place, so it was perfect for him to return to the blade now. Moreover, he lacked long-range attacks right now, so he could not just show the cursive sword calligraphy to others. The wind entwining blade's wind blade technique suited him very well. Work hard to earn money. Earn money to marry a wife. Wait. In the end, he put everything into the new 100 treasures pouch and gave the old one to Little, and "We'll each take one. You don't have anything, so I'll use this big one. But don't worry, I'll definitely make an even better one for you in the future." The one on Zhujibu's waist seemed pretty good. Li Qingshan could not help but think, "Do I hope you come and make trouble for me? Or do I hope you don't come and make trouble for me?" Little and obviously had no interest in that. He accepted the 100 treasures pouch obediently and placed the scholarwood tablet inside. Li Qingshan took a comfortable, hot bath and changed into the Black Wolf uniform. He equipped the wind entwining blade and told Little and to look after the house before making his way out. A banquet was set up in the large hall. Zhujibu sat at the center, with over a dozen tables lined up on either side. 2 people sat at each table, and they were all arranged according to their cultivation. Gu Jian patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. Just bear with it for now. Because he was a first-layer Qi practitioner, he had the lowest cultivation among all the Hawkwolf guards, so he could only sit at the very back. However, everyone knew that if they actually fought, he would probably be no weaker than a third-layer Qi practitioner. Li Qingshan did not care about this. As soon as he sat down, there was a fragrance from beside him. Qian Rongji actually sat down beside him. She said charmingly, "Logically speaking, I'm the weakest. You've really been wronged." Li Qingshan wondered, is it really like the legends, where the colder you are to a beauty, the more coquettish a beauty will become to cling to you? However, this thought only lasted for a moment. He could not forget how this woman behaved when she achieved what she wanted. If he really could forget about her actions in the past, then that would not be forgiving. Instead, there would be something wrong with his head. It was already too late for him to put on an act now. However, since she had welcomed him with a smile, he refused to lose his bearing. He said indifferently, "Looks like the strong and the weak are separated everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you go." Qian Rongji did not seem to hear the sarcasm in his words. She continued to smile. She seemed to be in an extremely good mood now that she had joined the Hawkwolf Guard. Zhuozhibua arrived late. He said a few polite words and welcomed Li Qingshan and the others. Afterwards, he introduced the Hawkwolf Guards present to the three of them with a chuckle. Including Li Qingshan and the others, there were a total of 31 Hawkwolf Guards around Jiaping City. Apart from a few who were in secluded cultivation or out on missions, all of them were present under Zhuojibua's lead. Everyone raised their cups and congratulated the three of them on joining the Hawkwolf Guard. He understood the rate at which his strength was growing the best. Once Zhuojibua understood the truth, just how powerful would he be? Jiao Fei was extremely envious of Li Qingshan's treatment. Zhuojibua basically did not even look at him properly, so he had no idea about the twists and turns. Zhuojibua shot a glance at Qian Rongji before returning to his seat. Qian Rongji treated Li Qingshan even more eagerly, as if she wanted to mend her relationship with Li Qingshan. As a matter of fact, she did not even wait for the female attendants, personally pouring wine for Li Qingshan. She drank quite a lot, and the charm in her eyes seemed like it was about to drip. It attracted the gazes of many Black Wolf guards who were envious, but they all looked away as soon as they glanced at Zhuojibua. Li Qingshan really did not hold back. He downed the wine as soon as it was poured, enjoying her service calmly. With how sharp his senses were, he had sensed a long time ago that Qian Rongji had some dirty ties with Zhuojibua. As it seemed, while he had been cultivating in seclusion for the past 3 days, she had not been idling around either. Sure enough, things like unwritten rules were everywhere. He felt even more disdain towards her. However, he could not be bothered with her matters. If she could be sold, then so be it. The only thing he considered was whether these two potential enemies would work together against him. He persuaded, encouraged, and half-dragged the two of them into the brothel. The roar of voices filled the air. Many men and women were hugging each other in disheveled clothing. It was a scene of revelry and bliss. In this strange atmosphere, everyone had no scruples, releasing themselves to their heart's content. It was like the legendary pool of wine and forest of flesh. Even Li Qingshan, a transmigrator from the modern era, was a little dumbfounded. "Uncle Ge, you've made the ladies wait for a long time. The room you booked is the first room in the sky. Please come upstairs." A fat woman with heavy makeup came up to greet them. When she saw Li Qingshan and Jiao Fei, she said, "Hey, these two little brothers, you look unfamiliar." Li Qingshan saw that the lady boss's body was also flowing with true energy. She was a chi practitioner. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.